allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody to the April 20th meeting of the Fishers City Council. I think we have some announcements. John, do you have an announcement for us?
Yes, I do. Construction season alerts. Spring is here, and that means it's construction season. Fishers residents are encouraged to sign up for road construction updates on the Fishers website. Please see www.fishers.in.us and click the Fishers alert button. You can sign up for several different email alerts, including the road notices list. If you use Twitter, make sure you follow @DriveFishers for more frequent road construction and traffic updates.
Okay, and then Eric, can I get you to do the next announcement for us?
Summer concert season announcement. Make sure you stay tuned this week for the summer concert season lineup announcement. Fishers Parks and Recreation will announce the lineup for the Tuesday night concerts and the Friday AMP After Dark shows. There's another national act coming to the Nickel Plate District Amphitheater in July, and of course, all shows are free. Like the Nickel Plate District Amphitheater page on Facebook for more information about the lineup, parking, and promotions.
Thank you, Eric. And then I believe we have a couple proclamations tonight, and I'm going to have Stuart read the first proclamation on World Landscape Architecture Month.
The City of Fishers Proclamation. Whereas the month of April 2015 has been designated as World Landscape Architecture Month to celebrate and recognize the many contributions of the Indiana chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects in Fishers, Indiana, and whereas 49 chapters of the American Society of Landscape Architects, the ASLA, founded in 1899, will be collaborating with landscape architects across the world by connecting with its 15,000 plus members, 7,200 student chapters, and other organizations throughout the World Landscape Architecture Month. And whereas locally, landscape architects have made a tremendous contribution to the City of Fishers and have impacted the vibrancy of our city, including important contributions to the Nickel Plate Master Plan, the Central Green, the train station plaza, City Gateway features, Nickel Plate streetscape designs, Flat Fork Creek Park, and many other improvements to our parks and public spaces. And whereas World Landscape Architecture Month provides an opportunity for Fishers residents to recognize the contributions of landscape architects in the Fishers community and celebrate the spaces that landscape architects have designed for the vibrancy of the community. Therefore, Scott Fadness, Mayor of the City of Fishers, and the honorable members of the City Council do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 as World Landscape Architecture Month in the City of Fishers, and all residents are encouraged to celebrate it.
Thanks, Stuart. David, can I go ahead and have you read the next proclamation for us?
President Peterson, if I could jump in. Actually, I would like the opportunity to present this next proclamation and tell you a little about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption in the agenda.
Didn't know you wanted to
So
jump in there, Tom.
David, sorry about that. Sorry to jump in here. So this proclamation we were asked to participate in the Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is this month of April, and of course our police department is involved in that process too much these days. But we are participating. We have actually. You'll see some blue pinwheels, which are all over the county and I think all over the country this week, recognizing Child Abuse Prevention Month. The Advocates for Children and Families and the Cherish Center in Noblesville is the group that came to us and said, could you put this in front of the City Council, and you'll be pleased to know that you're not the only City Council doing this. Carmel is doing it. I think they actually already did it this evening, and Noblesville is doing it, and I suspect Westville is doing it as well. But it's really raising the awareness of child abuse in our community. I'm a board member at the Cherish Center and the Advocates for Children and Family, and they do great work, and I'm pleased to present this proclamation tonight. So with that, David, I'll let you go ahead and read the proclamation.
Thank you, Tom.
Whereas the City of Fishers is committed to working with community organizations to ensure we are a safe community for residents of all ages, and whereas identifying and preventing child abuse is a community responsibility that requires education, awareness, and involvement for residents, city officials, and local organizations, and whereas 5 million children are reported as abused and neglected in this nation, including 60,000 children that are reported as abused or neglected in Indiana each year, and whereas Advocates for Children and Families and the Cherish Center advocate for and promote policies and practices that place value on children, strengthening bonds between families, and engaging communities in an ongoing conversation about how we can keep children safe while helping them thrive and be successful in Fishers. Therefore, Scott Fadness, Mayor of the City of Fishers, and honorable members of the City Council do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Fishers, and all residents are encouraged to recognize it.
Thank you, David. I think we have the consent. There's no more, right? There was one additional proclamation John thought we had. We don't have another one. We just had the two, correct? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the following: the March 16, 2015 executive session, March 16, 2015 work and regular section, and April 1st, 2015 special session.
A motion by John. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any conversation? Seeing none, let's call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up the RDC, I believe is what we have to open up. So I'm going to have you guys open up your meeting, if you can.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. We've got a quorum. I'll call to order the meeting of the Redevelopment Commission for the City of Fishers. I'll also entertain a consent for the meeting minutes. If you have any questions or problems related to those minutes, just go ahead and turn those in later. On the agenda today is FRC 001R042015, the declaratory resolution of the Fishers Redevelopment Commission, amending the Economic Development Plan for the Oleo Road I-69 Economic Development Area in the city of Fishers, Indiana. Any questions or comments from the commission, please?
Could you start off with just an overview of the development plan that
Yes, 1 second here as we pull up our presentation. Thank you, Council President Peterson, the council members of the Redevelopment Commission for coming here tonight for our monthly meeting, but also for an exciting opportunity that we have to entertain a project. Tonight is the formal introduction of that project, and there will be some specific statutory processes that we will move forward with tonight, and Tom Dickey, our Community Development Director, will touch on each one of those at the end of our presentation tonight. But first and foremost, I want to reiterate that this is the start of a public process where we're going to have lots of conversations and dialogue with the residents over the next 30 days as we contemplate what I think is a very unique opportunity for the City of Fishers. To give you a little context and background around this specific project, the City of Fishers has entertained multiple opportunities for indoor recreational space and youth athletics and event centers over the last at least 3 years that I can remember. To the point where several times we had said, no, that's not the right economic structure for our city over and over again. Until finally, recently, GK Sports Development Group came to us with an economic structure that we think could make an awful lot of sense here in our community. And to reiterate, this is truly a privately driven development. And so tonight, I'm going to introduce Barry Kiesel from GK Sports Development to come up, introduce his team, introduce the vision that these developers have for the facility. And then once he's done, I'm going to come back up, talk a little bit about what this would look like if the community were to be involved or leverage this private development to meet some of the goals that we have, some of the needs that we have. And then ultimately, Tom Dickey, our Community Development Director, is going to come up and talk about the statutory process and what are the actions that would need to be taken. So with that, I'd like to have Barry Kiesel come forward and talk a little bit about the vision of this project.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for hearing our proposal this evening. Our team consists of really three groups. There's a development group, which is myself, my partner, Andy Gurdam, local organization here in town called Round Tripper, which has currently been operating an indoor turf facility over in the Westfield area for the last 20 years, and representing that is Sue Estep. In addition to that, our arena operator will be Game 7, and representing Game 7 tonight is Val Belmonte, and he will also be speaking here a little bit later on the impact. When we set out on this conversation and this journey, we really had three fundamental goals that we were trying to achieve that led to our whole design process. Number one was the facility needed to be affordable. It needed to have wholesome entertainment, and it needed to be family entertainment. So that was priority number one. The second thing was to establish a multi-purpose facility that the community would have access to, but at the same time we could have a wide variety of events, championships, and be able to potentially bring in a significant amount of people from outside the community to Fishers. And lastly, the underlying principle was that we were going to embrace the principles of the Olympic sports movement. Our facility currently will be able to handle Olympics, Paralympics, and senior Olympic types of venues, those types of things, all incorporated obviously within the local community. The facility is located in Saxony. The northern boundary is 136th Street. The eastern boundary, not of necessarily our project, but is Olia Road. The southern boundary is 134th Street, and the western boundary is Minden Road. The facility basically incorporates two different types of venue spaces. One is this piece right here, which is the arena and practice arena. People have tried to pigeonhole this as just being another hockey rink, but that's not the case. It will seat 4,200 people in what we call bowl seating, or what we call an ice venue. It's expandable for court events, volleyball, high school, basketball tournaments, those types of things. We can seat up to 5,500 people. And then ultimately, if we have a concert or a play or a show, we can seat up to 6,000 people. The second portion of our venue space is this facility right here. This is has basically two different components to it. There's two full-size soccer fields, turf related, and then there'll be 12 basketball courts. Our original proposal was 8. In talking with the city and the groups at sports, it was determined that we needed more court space for a lot of the local basketball programs here. So we expanded that. And then lastly, we're pretty excited that Round Tripper is making a commitment over here to add a baseball academy that will be all indoor baseball. The facility has been designed, and we've worked with all of the various NGBs, which stands for National Governing Bodies, to accommodate 31 different Olympic sports, not simultaneously. It is expandable. To give you some idea, we can convert the turf field space to 32 additional courts, and those could be used for basketball, volleyball, badminton, table tennis, anything along that line. The second thing, or third component of this is the parking garage. It's still under design, but that will house over 600 cars for parking. And then the third component that we're currently working on is down here is what we call basically our medical office building. There will be 2 prominent entrances, one here for the field house, which is really Monday through Friday is basically for local use. The arena you'll enter in from this front side. Future development could incorporate a hotel, which we're in conversations with some folks on that, and we have sufficient parking all around the premise to handle what we're currently looking at. The arena is kind of a unique in that it is what we call a bowl seating. So basically when you enter the complex from street level, all traffic goes upstairs, and then there's one concourse that goes all the way around. So no matter where you are in the facility, you have access and viewing lines to whatever the field of play or concert or venue might be at that time. The facility has all the same amenities as a large facility. We will have concessions all along this line. In these various corners, they call them party zones, and I use that in a way that people can stand and converse and socialize. We will have executive suites here on this end of the thing. And then all of the administrative offices and those types of things for the arena will be below here. And then we have a second practice rink here, which will be for open skate, local hockey clubs, those types of things. This gives you an example of the arena uses. On the left-hand side of the page is basically the event structure. There'll be roughly about 114 events. The sports franchise can be hockey, it can be basketball, it could be lacrosse, it could be arena football. That's yet to be determined yet, but we have had significant interest there. We know that there's a number of colleges that will look forward to using this facility for having their conference championships. And the same thing we're anticipating with high school sectionals, and we're hoping to encourage, a nice championship between HSC and Fishers. On the right-hand side, you get an idea of how the local use will be in terms of rental. Obviously, it includes youth hockey, figure skating, adult, all sorts of summer camps, tournaments. And again, the key here is that this floor surface can be changed from being ice to a solid surface. We can put sand in it for beach volleyball, rodeos. So it is totally a multifunctional facility, which is really unique for this type of market. This gives you kind of a list, and I'm not going to read all of these things, but basically you can see that this will be attractive to major sports, entertainments and shows. It's really kind of the perfect venue size, because when you look at something like the Clip Center, which is an outdoor center, or the Murat Center, or some of the other facilities, we are sized right for a lot of medium-sized concerts and entertainment, family entertainment, Disney on Ice, those different types of things. And you'll see the various types of sport programming. And this will be an all-inclusive facility. Again, we're embracing the Olympic sports movement, which is both Olympic and Paralympic sports. The field house has really kind of almost infinite combinations of how we can utilize this facility. The base facility that we will have is really this setup here. There's 2 fields, and again, we don't show all 12 courts, but that's kind of our base configuration. We then can take the fields and cut these in fours. Now, to kind of give you some idea, the width of the building, and this is clear span, is 240 feet across here. So basically, it's the size of a softball field. We can also, based on age appropriate, cut the fields down this way and get 8 fields. And again, what you're talking about, each one of these is currently 80 yards long by 50 yards wide. Perfect for indoor training for soccer, lacrosse, any of those types of things. We can change the configuration by installing, and when I say installing, these are portable. We can actually put in a 200-meter track, and we can have any indoor type of qualification for state high school, colleges, those types of things. Or we can take that and we can lay any different type of court configuration down for volleyball, basketball, as outlined here. So the facility is extremely flexible. Again, this gives you some examples. The field house, again, is one of those things currently that will really, the community will use a lot. Basically from 3 o'clock to 9 or 10, it's basically going to be all youth-oriented sports, travel, sports on the weekend, those types of things. During the summer, there's lots of camps that we will have. Again, where we had a great conversation today with a group in terms of some of the Paralympic types of things. And then the other thing that I forgot to mention on the field house is in the upper level, and again, to try to put this in scale, if you've ever been to Lucas Oil Stadium, basically you're going to have 2 football fields end to end. That's just a portion of the facility. So you'll have a walking track around the top that will hopefully encourage the seniors to come in, and instead of walking at the mall, they can come to the facility here and walk around the upper part. But again, in terms of the floor configurations, we have the ability on a court to do basketball, volleyball, badminton. Pickleball is really starting to grow. If this project goes through, this would be the largest indoor pickleball place in the country. Match sports, again, that includes fencing, wrestling, judo, karate, taekwondo, gymnastics, cheer, and dance. And then on the turf, those are obvious, and again, we can implement an indoor track facility. We will have a 200-meter straightaway track on the north end of the field house that'll be there permanently. We're hoping the high schools will use that for a lot of their sprints and hurdles and those types of things. Again, we're anticipating about 154 event days. People begin to add all this up and they say, well, how can you have so many event days? It's because we can do so many different events simultaneously. So we can have a basketball tournament going on, people can be using it recreationally, and we can divide up these courts into a variety of different sports. What I'd like to do now is turn this over to Val Belmonte, and before I do this, I've known Val a long time. Our backgrounds go back, but he has a career in both NCAA sports and with the Olympic movement that stretches over 30 years. And I think in my conversations with him, his excitement in this project, but I think he can give you a real good idea of the impact that this is going to have on the community, both from a local recreational standpoint and what it does to really brand the community in terms of your emphasis on youth sports and so forth. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Val.
Council members, thank you for inviting me here. It's great to talk about this exciting project. I want you to go back to one of the slides that Barry put up. Remember the 3 goals? And I think our direction, you have to keep that in mind all the time, because every time we talked about this project and when we planned it out, we have that strategic goals or strategic objectives. And there's a couple things that was mentioned in there. It's affordable, wholesome family entertainment. That's one. The other one is talking about what it will do and impact in the community. It has to be that. And then the third piece was talked about the Olympic movement, Olympic sports. One of the things you have to remember about before I move on and talk about the impact, in amateur sports in the United States, and if we are going to embrace the Olympic movement, we can't start from the top down. We have to start from the bottom up. So our goal is to make sure that we provide as much training opportunities and competition opportunities for the local youth amateur athletes that we have here right now, because the stronger the base we have, the stronger the programs we have moving forward up the pyramid. And I think for us to look at an Olympic embracement or a Paralympic embracement or a Special Olympic embracement, we have to make sure that bottom of the pyramid is extremely strong, whether it be the participants or the coaches or the parents' participation. So that's one of the things we wanted to talk about. The other thing I think is important to mention as well is that the economic impact is far beyond, or the impact itself. This facility is not a brick and mortar facility. It's not a turf facility. It's a community facility. It's going to have a soul to it. It'll have a personality to it. It's going to bring certain individual peoples to your communities and also community usage within the community itself. And that's really important because, yes, we're going to have entertainment. Yes, we're going to have shows. Yes, we're going to provide a different element for the community itself. But we want to be a part of the fabric of the community. We want to make sure the community helps develop that personality of the building. We want to make sure the community helps us strive to bring the type of events we want to bring in. We talked about Olympic events. We talked about different type of NGB events, whether they be training or whether they be competition. One of the things I shared this facility with some of the Olympic athletes and former stars we've had in our country, and looking at what the biggest complaint is in our United States, whether it be training or whether it be preparation for competition, is that there are a lot of sports in the national governing body movement that does not put their athletes in a field of play. Sports like fencing, taekwondo, boxing, judo, table tennis, badminton. And what I mean by a field of play, I'm going to go back to one of my sports. I was CEO of USA Fencing. And when you do a USA fencing event, you're basically in a warehouse. You're putting a lot of strips out there. There's a lot of athletes competing. It's not real attractive to sponsors. It's not real friendly to spectators. But the biggest disadvantage there is to the athletes themselves, because all of a sudden they're competing in the United States, not in a real, true competitive environment, and then all of a sudden they're going overseas and expected to participate in a world championship or the Olympic Games or the Pan American Games or the Paralympic Games. And there is some disadvantage to that. So I think it's really important that we provide those opportunities, that they're going to train in an environment that they're prepared to go on a world-class stage, and I think that's really important to remember. I want to turn your attention to a couple quotes that we have up there that were given to us by a couple Olympians. And this one is by Seth Kelty. Seth is a 3-time Olympian. He's a world champion. He's a 2-time medal winner in the World Senior Games. He's going to be the 2016 Summer Olympic coach for the U.S. pentathlon team, and he's a 2nd lieutenant in the United States Air Force Reserves. And he quotes this and saying, being great on the world stage takes a confluence of factors. The proposed facility in Fishers, Indiana brings all those factors together in one place. The Fishers Sports Pavilion will provide world-class entertainment and sports-specific training venue, international level competition space, elite strength and conditioning, medical and sports medicine facility, and just one stop to almost any destination in the world. There is no facility in the United States that even comes close in comparison. No other facility in the United States. And that's a true statement by an individual that had to go around the world trying to train in order to represent this country in 3 Olympic Games. The Fisher Sports Pavilion will be a fertile ground for not only our U.S. best athletes, but also our youth athletes. I couldn't be more excited and truly about this world-class facility. Our next group of athletes are a dance pair for the U.S. figure skating. They're an Olympian in 2006. They're a 6-time medalist at U.S. championships. They're a married couple right now, Melissa Gregory and Denis Pachenkov. And what they said was interesting because they're taking it on a different level. The importance of sports and education in a community is vital to its development. A project like the Fisher Sports Pavilion will provide many opportunities for youth and their families to excel in health, culture, and athletic excellence. Additionally, this proposed facility will provide outstanding exposure for the community as world-class athletes come to train and compete in this facility. That says a lot. And when you talk to these individuals, they get excited about something like this because they've been through the ringer. They know what it takes to become an elite level athlete. And if you look at some of their quotes, even Jetty Potter's quote, who is the Ohio State women's head hockey coach, she's the most decorated female hockey player of all times. She won 4 Olympic medals, including a gold medal the first time out. And she says that the Fisher Sports Pavilion will prove to become nationally renowned sports or venue for concerts, sporting events, family shows, ice shows, and even more. Incredible venues such as this proposed pavilion will create a perfect stage for the athletes of all ages and levels to perform their best and give the community a strong sense of pride and lasting benefits. Through the engagement of national sports organizations, youth athletes, families, coaches, an array of sports competitions produce a portal through which the neighboring communities can enjoy the Fisher Pavilion experience. And what they were saying, and it was true what I had on the slide before, is that building up your youth sports, giving them an opportunity to participate in a world-class facility, which it is a world-class facility, it's multi-purpose. Barry's correct in saying everybody's going to look at the arena as a hockey rink. It's not a hockey rink. They're going to look at the field house just as a turf indoor football practice field, and it's not. And all 3 of those facilities have to work collectively together. And all the components have to be really kind of synchronized to the point where one piece is not more important than the other piece. One of the things I wanted to also mention too with regards to an environment is that we are presently in discussion with the United States Olympic Committee to apply for 2 programs. Number 1, we're going to apply for a program for an Olympic designated training center where if we get this designation, it takes 3 years. The pavilion has to be open for 3 years before we can apply. And what that enables us to do, it enables us to bring different NGB sports here where the athletes would live here, work here, be part of your community, train here, and get ready for their competitions. And the second program we're looking at is the Olympic Development Program or Community Development Program, and that's education through sports. So that's what the U.S. Olympic Committee combined with the programs we have will reach out into the community, educate the youth of this particular area in different type of sporting events, educational opportunities. one of the things that I think that's really important to have an Olympic training center here within your communities. You have these high-level athletes that are going to be walking around that will be part of your community service work, helping the elderly, going into hospitals, doing some volunteer work, and so on and so forth. So when you take a look at what this facility will provide is your training facility that's accessible to your community, different type of events where it's Olympic events, NCAA competitions, under 16, under 18 type of events, international competition coming to your community, being able to provide different type of community pride programs where we could develop different type of programs where you'll compete community against community or inter-community basketball or wrestling or whatever it may be. It's also a multi-purpose size facility which will provide the community with affordable, wholesome family entertainment. It's going to be a facility where you're going to feel comfortable to be in. It's going to be a facility that's approachable, where we want you to be there even when there's not events going on, unlike some of these other large facilities. And it's going to be a place where families could come there and feel safe about bringing their children because they could keep an eye on them at all times. And at the same time, bring entertainment, different type of entertainments to the community you haven't had before. So I want to thank you for the time. I appreciate the time and turn it over to the mayor. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we've heard from the developers their vision for this project. Now I'd like to talk a little bit from a city perspective why we would be involved in this project and walk through kind of the structure of the relationship that would exist between the city and the proposed development. First off, let's just talk about the general investment in terms of real estate into our community. So the arena, the total investment is around $27 million for the arena. The field house is $32 million, and the parking is $8.4 million. All of that adds up to roughly $0.4 million, or around $75 million. What's important to note about that is all of that is privately funded and privately financed. So none of those dollar amounts that I have up there are funded by a bond or a tax or anything like that for this project. Secondly, what we've come to realize over the last year, we were working on our park master plan, and one of the things we did is we went out and we actually got a scientific survey of our residents to ask them what they thought about our park system. And one of the questions we asked was, would the maximum amount of additional taxes a respondent or household would be willing to pay to operate the new indoor community center? So one of the things we asked about was, do we have a need for indoor recreational space? And the answer was yes. And then we asked the simple question, well, how much would you be willing to pay to get that? Because obviously anyone would say, well, yeah, I'd love to have that, but I don't want to pay anything for it. So one of the questions was, well, what would you be willing to pay? 80% of the respondents said they'd be willing to pay something, at least $20 additional money annually for an indoor recreational facility, which we found to be quite extraordinary in today's world, that 80% of our residents said they'd be willing to pay something to have an indoor community or indoor recreational facility. And so knowing that there was a growing community need for indoor recreational space, particularly around hard courts and track or walking space, we entered into this conversation with these folks who had this wonderful vision for this development and tried to figure out, was there a way that we could creatively structure a deal that made sense for both sides and met a community need, and at the same time allowed for this development, which we think could really be transformative for Exit 210. And so, to reiterate some of the community benefits that we understood, Hamilton County Sports Corporation was good enough to do an assessment annually of what the economic impact of all these types of tournaments and things to our community would be. And they estimate $110 million annual economic impact to our community for having all of these folks visit and spend their money here in Fishers in the greater Hamilton County area. We know that there'll be nearly $80 million of new assessed value because we know the construction costs are roughly that, and we assume that it will be taxed at roughly the same amount. I think it's obvious that this type of development is a catalyst for other developments, whether it be hotels, restaurants, things of that nature. So we know that not only will you see an $80 million investment in the area just from the facility alone, but you're going to see other other investment as well. And finally, we found an opportunity to enter into a long-term lease agreement with the folks at GK Sports Development to provide youth sports and indoor track for walkers and joggers. And let me walk you through just basically, those were the benefits. Again, economic impact. To give you some perspective, we had this chart drawn up on local economic impact. And as you see, the Fisher Sports Pavilion annually would rival some of the things that we've really become accustomed to, the Final Four, local impact. Big Ten football championship, Super Bowl. It gives you an idea of the economic impact that if this facility is running top-notch, could have on our local economy. So, what is the city involvement in this particular project? I want to break it into two sections because I think it's important to understand the difference. First of all is incentives. We often talk about what we do to incentivize economic development to our community, and that's something the community is either generating revenue, tax revenue to give to them, or we're forfeiting revenue that could come into the city. The things that they have asked for, one is a 10-year tax abatement for the arena and parking garage. Keep in mind, because this is a private facility, the entire thing will be generating property tax revenue. And so what they have asked for is a 10-year tax abatement for the arena and the parking garage. The field house, day one, once it's assessed, will be generating property taxes, 100% full load of property taxes. But the arena and the parking garage, they're asking for a 10-year, 50% tax abatement. That equates to about a $2 million foregoance, if you will, of property tax revenue over that 10-year period, $200,000 annually. On top of that, they've asked for the waiver of impact fees, which we project at about $800,000. As you know, every time we do a new development, we implement road impact fees on commercial development. This would be a waiver of those impact fees and the marginal or small permitting fees that we go through when it goes to building plan review and things of that nature. So those are the two what I would call true economic development incentives. The final item is a little bit different than an economic development incentive because it truly is an exchange of money for a good. In this particular case, we're looking at a 20-year lease agreement, which includes an annual payment of $805,000. This $805,000, what does it get the residents of Fishers? Between the hours of 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. every evening between the Monday and Thursday, that facility, those 12 basketball courts or some equivalent to that in the facility, will be used by the city of Fishers. And our intent is to work closely with our sports organization to basically turn that over for all youth athletics and intramural athletics to meet the growing need that we have in our community. Along with that, there'll be at least 6 hours a day that the jogging and walking track will be available for our residents for free. And so we haven't worked out the logistics yet, but you can envision a scenario where someone who wants to go use the jogging track would walk into our parks department, show their driver's license, get a key fob or a code, and then have free access to this walking and jogging track for those hours. And then in the summer, you would see an additional 3.5 hours a day during the summer for the use of this facility as well. On top of that, we've also negotiated to be able to use the arena for 3 events during the year that the community would like to use it for at cost. So no additional rental fee, just to cover the cost of the event. So whether it's sectionals or whatever the community might come up with for an event, we would have the opportunity for 3 of those events a year. So the final line there is paid by project, property taxes, park impact fees, and ticket charges. So any good fiscal steward would say, where's the $805,000 originating from on an annual basis? So going back to the fact that this facility is privately owned and will be generating property taxes, this facility is currently in a TIF district. And the revenue collected off of those taxes are already being collected, or is already being set aside for that area. And so we've negotiated with the developer of Saxony to set aside, after debt service is paid on the first set of debt that is out in Saxony, the next $400,000 of increment generated on an annual basis will go directly to paying the lease for this facility. And we project that within a matter of 3 to 5 years, we do believe that that $400,000 will be generated as additional development that comes on. On top of that, part of our lease structure with GK Development is that they will charge either somewhere between a $1 and $2 ticket fee on all ticketed events. in the facility. We think that'll generate at a minimum around $200,000. And so right there between the taxes generated off the facility and the ticket fee, you have about $600,000 when things are all ramped up and going. That leaves about $200,000 annually to be able to provide to our residents 12 basketball courts for free usage, as well as the track for free. That we envision using park impact fee revenue, of which we collect somewhere between $500,000 and $800,000 a year in revenue. So a couple things that I want to reiterate about this structure. One, we're not issuing any kind of debt. This is not a property tax back obligation. If for some reason the developer, and we hope this doesn't occur, but if for some reason the developer is not able to finance the project, we're not out any money. If for some reason 3 years into this project, the developer is unable to perform and they have to close the doors and they put chains on the building and we're no longer have access to the facility, we stop paying our lease payment. And so this truly is a tenant lease scenario for this and not an economic development incentive. So I want to make that very clear as we have this conversation, as we move on into our community conversations. Finally, I'd like to ask Tom Dickey to come forward tonight and really walk you through the legislative process that we're going to be going through with this project as we work through the next 30 days. So, Tom?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm going to do a couple things tonight. So first of all, I just want to spend, before we get to, there's some items on the agenda tonight that we need to cover, and I will walk you through those. But before that, I want to walk you through the entire process that will unfold over the coming weeks. And as the Mayor said, there are two things the city's involved in. One is a lease, a tenant lease for use of the property, and the other are the incentives that are involved. And I'll add a third thing to that we have to consider, which is a rezoning of the property or an amendment to the existing text out there. And that's the first thing I want to tell you about tonight. So that process will be, tonight you'll hear a first reading. I will introduce the staff report on the requested changes to the PUD. As you know, that first reading just simply moves it on to the Plan Commission, which would then hear it on May 12th, and there would be a public hearing at that process, or at that time. Notice would be mailed to the affected landowners in accordance with state law, and the Plan Commission will have a public hearing, and that again is on May 12th. And then on the 12th, assuming the Plan Commission will make a recommendation on the project, and I think there's enough information available for them to make a recommendation, that would come back to you at your next meeting on May 18th for second reading of the ordinance and possibly third reading of the ordinance if that is your desire. So that is the zoning process that will unfold beginning tonight. With respect to the city lease component, actually something does need to happen tonight. And again, I'm not asking that to move forward right now. I'll do that in just a minute, but just going to walk you through the process. The economic development plan that's in place for Saxony talks about building roads and Saxony Lake and all the other things that have happened out there that have involved TIF. That plan exists and is out there. It does not have in it a reference to leasing a facility like this. And so that plan simply needs to be amended to add that to it. And that actually is what the RDC will do tonight, and I'll introduce that in a few minutes. Assuming they take that action tonight, then that goes through a process a lot like zoning. On May 12th, the Plan Commission also will look at that, not from an economic development incentive perspective. What the Plan Commission's job is to look at that amendment to the plan and make sure the use that likely will come from that amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We wouldn't be here, but the staff believes that it is, and we'll be making that recommendation to the Plan Commission. And then, wow, it looked like I left off some words here, but then on May 18th, it would come back to you for you to consider finalizing essentially that amendment to the plan. And then in early June, it then goes to the RDC for the final steps. There's actually 4 steps in that process. It starts with the RDC tonight, goes to the Plan Commission, comes to you, and then back to the RDC in June. And so there'll be plenty of time for public input in that process. And that's the first part of what needs to happen in order to allow the city to enter into a lease if we decide to move forward. And then finally, the actual lease itself will be approved, and that will be in early June, so that won't be at your next meeting. That will be in early June. And that we're still working on the structure of that with bond counsel and our local counsel and city attorney. But I think that's going to actually involve an RDC lease to consider that resolution. And as you would suspect, if it is an RDC action, consistent with how we operate in Fishers, we'll be fully engaging you in that discussion so that the RDC and you're on the same page as they might take that action. So that's what happens with respect to the city lease. And so that the last thing then are the incentives, and as the mayor said, there are two components of the incentive. One is the tax abatement, and one is the waiver of impact fees. And so with respect to the tax abatement, again, the request is for 50% abatement for 10 years, which means obviously the positive of that, it means year one, when it starts paying taxes, they're paying 50% of taxes that otherwise wouldn't be there if you didn't incentivize this project. So tonight, the City Council will consider a resolution, which is just the first step, declaring the area eligible to grant tax abatement. That starts a process, a very specific process under the statute. Tomorrow, then, we have to publish notice and deliver notices to all the taxing districts that are affected by that. So that'll happen tomorrow. And then on May 18th, it would come back to you for a confirmatory or a sort of a final step in that process. And so tonight, what I'll be asking you to do is just to start that process tonight. And then we'll go through the public engagement meetings, and then assuming you're prepared that on May 18th to either confirm that resolution or not confirm that resolution. So that will be the first step you take tonight. And then the waiver of impact fees is actually the simplest of the processes. There's nothing before you tonight. We'll present the detail of the waived fees to you if the project continues to move forward on May 18th, and ask you to consider a resolution waiving the impact fees. So those are the three processes that will be unfolding. And as you all well know, because you've been part of the planning process in this, in addition to those public hearing dates that I just went through, tonight, May 12th at the Plan Commission, and May 18th back at the City Council, there are 3 other meetings scheduled for the public to learn about this project and provide input. There won't be any votes at these meetings. They aren't official public hearings. These are just things that between yourselves and the mayor have decided that we really need to get out and talk to the public about this project, so they'll be occurring on April 22nd at Cross Point Church, on April 30th just across the way at Launch Fishers, and then back here on May 7th. And in those meetings, we'll get into a lot more detail. We'll be responding to questions from the public, things like traffic, which A&F has been studying for a while now. I think he's got a good plan on how we can deal with that. And other issues about zoning, for example, the meeting at Cross Point Church is located most closely to their project, and we're assuming that if you live in that area and you like it or don't like it because it's close to your house, you would come to that meeting and learn about it and talk about it. So at that meeting, we may be talking more about zoning issues. But it's really whatever the public wants to talk about, we will be ready to engage them in those meetings. So any questions on the overall process? If not, Mr. President, we'll move back to the agenda and start tackling the items that we have specifically.
Any questions for Tom at this point? I'll just make a quick comment just to reiterate. Again, this is a first reading. If we so choose to have that, there will be no public comment tonight. I think as you can see, as Tom and staff have laid out, there's going to be a number of opportunities for public input. The official record will happen on May 18th and at the May 12th Planning Commission meeting, where you can go on official record and actually speak there. So there's 2 additional public hearings for that. And then we move from there. So I hope everybody wasn't looking forward to making public comment tonight, because there's going to be none. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up the council for any comments.
I have a question. What is the total of the waiver of the impact fees and the permit fees? I was just wondering what that number is.
We'll have that for you at May 18th for sure. But we've been working with A&F to estimate the road impact fees, and I know that number, which is in the $750,000 range, and I'm assuming, as the mayor said, that there's smaller permit fees and so forth, that those add up to maybe about $50,000. So for purposes of answering your question tonight, the answer is about $800,000, but we will have that dialed in for you by the May 18th when we present that resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, just a comment. This is something that just didn't happen here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's something that we've been working on for a long time, and certainly thank you and Scott for your hard work, but also, we worked together as a council, the town council before us, and our current city council to work towards a deal that's looks like a great opportunity for our community. Certainly thank you, gentlemen, for your investment. The other great thing I like about this particular opportunity is that our residents get to enjoy this facility. That's a great thing. Our residents get to enjoy it, our youth get to enjoy it, and it's going to be a great part of our community. So certainly looking forward to this project getting underway.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, and I know that you guys have put a lot of effort into this, and I appreciate the binders and everything that we're going to start to go through. I've started to go through that, and I think everything's put together in very good fashion. I think that you guys laid everything out, but I just want to make just a couple comments as I look through this, leading up to some of the final votes. We've had a couple different iterations, totally different scenarios, totally different developers, totally different things, so I understand that. But with that said, they've always gone to a certain point and then they've stopped. And a lot of times they've stopped because the income versus what it costs to maintain and work through over the long term just doesn't quite work. So whether the city is in for a limited amount, there's still an amount that the developer would have to do, and that's just, I just want to kind of dive into that a little bit more. And I think a lot of that's in here, so that's just one way that I'll look at this, is to make sure that the income and the expenses and everything works to the level that it needs to. And the other thing would just be the need for fishers. I think that there is a need. The other way that I look at this, Mayor, you mentioned a couple different dollar amounts. I fully understand that. And the way I'll kind of look at this is to kind of back into that. You've got a certain amount of expenditures, and if we were to go out and build a building, the city, you're going to have a certain rate, you're going to have a certain amount of money that would go out, and that could go to a certain amount of a loan. That would equate to a building, and how big would that be when that's sort of the purposes of what we have? Now, the way I look at that is if it does, then we get that plus a lot more by doing this. So I'm just trying to look through from an economic perspective that fits into the mix. And I think that you'll kind of get into this at the public hearings, but if, just for the public, if you could kind of help maybe the development team, just kind of explain who you are and just other things that you've done as far as other projects. And I know that you have done that, a lot of it's in here, but I think it would help in the public meetings just for people to hear that. And then the last thing would be, I just want to make sure if this does go through, there are certain items that I think, Mayor, you mentioned, a lot of what would be on the city's responsibility is going to be taken care of. I just want to make sure that that does carry forward so that there aren't discrepancies. So not discrepancies is not the right word. This little shortfalls because of 200,000, that wouldn't affect something else in the budget. I don't think it does the way that you explained it. I just want to check a couple boxes in my mind as I go forward. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
Just a couple of comments. Thank the mayor and Tom and staff and the RDC and for this presentation. I think we've heard when it was first announced in the paper, you know, where is the public input? Why didn't you tell us about this earlier? I think the issue is this is a long and you know, period in which is a private developer who's coming to the town with a proposal of what they want to do in the community, to the city. And this is the start of a month-long or could be longer public input process. And so I think echoing what David had said and others on the council have said, this is really the start, and we have 4 or more detailed opportunities. I think this is being, you know, recorded. It can be put on the website and made available. Presentations obviously made available. So I think the key thing here is this isn't any rush to decision. This is going to be a deliberative effort to gain and understand this project in great detail. So I appreciate that, and it's just the beginning of a dialogue with the community and availability for input, and to make sure everyone has a robust opportunity to understand it. I think this is, you know, quite remarkably, sometimes it's with all the facilities that have been going up in central Indiana, or, you know, this is somewhat, people are surprised. This is a private development, you know, and I think that we have to keep reiterating that. While the mayor was gracious enough to to help announce it to the community and be featured in the story, this is to characterize the project and the city's very potentially modest or input that's being proposed. This is a private development where we have some explicit comparator opportunities. For other policy reasons, other communities have decided to make big public input investments into facilities of $20, $30 million in that range, plus ongoing maintenance costs, as David was kind of alluding to. So in a way, this solution, I think we have to really continue to draw upon at the public sessions and paint the picture as sports has done to us, and this is an opportunity to meet a high demand in the community. So we have sports representatives here showing their interest to follow along, but also if there's a way to incorporate representatives from sports, our excellent director here wanted to, so they can really articulate the demand rather than the staff articulating the demand. That might be another opportunity. I think their organization certainly knows it, but I think the citizens at large can hear it. And so how is it that a private developer can come in and start meeting this need when, and then what is the role of the city in securing those facilities for sports, which has been our primary mission as it relates to youth sports, is securing facilities for them. So key there, as David kind of alluded to it, if we were to have used this $800,000 for a facility, one, you've got a much larger outlay of funding. You have then the ongoing operating expenses, and you have a number of things that take on risk for the community. So I'd like that to be drawn out in the public session. The additional thing was, I think the 20-year lease, some people say, well, you're really buying into a long-term commitment. I think I'd like the public to hear, and I'd like the council to hear later about what is it about these annual commitments that the facility has to meet certain qualitative expectations that sports can utilize the facility for its intended purposes. I think Mayor Fadness mentioned the closing the doors. That's most obvious and probably at one end of the spectrum. But if the facility starts to not be able to meet our needs as we envisaged it relative to either quality or hours or other types of things, what are the sort of the lease commitments so that sports organization knows that we've got there's the commitment there. We're meeting the demand in this manner in a very flexible way. And if that facility is not made available at the requisite quality and time and other aspects, then those are potential causes for the lease to be abrogated, and therefore that reduces our risk, and that's just another risk mitigation. So I think that's just something maybe you could draw attention to that to the extent that we have that ability. And then I think the opportunity which got mentioned in very passing was sort of the broader economic impact that it has just for the vitality of the community, and one of the three different pillars of the strategy. But there's the space for I think I saw the comment about the hotel, potential for a hotel, especially if it's bringing in people who then give good proximity. That'll have on additional benefits. But I guess the concern would be or question is the clarity on parking. 600, I heard a number for 600 in the structured parking. Then what is the approximate number of surface parking, if you will? And is that number enough for these type of large events that might be there, ranging from 4,000 to approximating 6,000, where citizens who live in the area might want to know where that parking if there is such a thing as parking overflow, where is that going? Or does it require everyone, is it modeled on everybody coming to the event is bringing 3.5 people, in that vehicle or something to that extent? So those are just top of mind, a couple of things. I think but really public input is really what this is about. We have a private developer who's bringing an opportunity to the community, looking for, let's say on average $3 million of some type of underwriting, of waiving of fees that would be only chargeable if there was something to charge a fee to. And an abatement, 50% abatement over 10 years is only an abatement if something actually comes out of the ground. So it's those are the aspects. And so 3% on 70+ thousand, $3 million on 70+ thousand of investment. I think that David mentioned the other projects that we've done as far as a community investment. That ratio seems very favorable and on the lower end of some of the economic development initiatives we've done in the past. Might be worthy of highlighting or just characterizing for the public. So look forward to engaging and understanding and hearing more public input.
Okay, thanks. Those are very good points. We'll make note of those for those public meetings.
Any other comments from council at this point? I'll just make a couple just in closing, and Stuart gave some excellent examples as to the efforts that were put forth by the mayor and certainly you, Tom, and your staff. I've been involved with this project for quite some time, so maybe I know a little bit more about it than some, but I think Stuart's exactly right. When you're dealing with these private enterprise groups who want to invest in your community, there's a time and a place for the public input, and that's now. I think some of the things that I want to make sure we touch on in the public hearings as well is what effect, if any, will have on our tax rate. I want to know what effect it'll have on any public safety increases, decreases, moving of people, et cetera. For public works, the same. Is this going to be categorized as debt? I hear that a lot from people because we're taking on more debt. So why don't we deal with that as we continue to talk? The other thing which I think always gets bantered about in a very bad light is TIF. In the public meetings, and I know it gets, those of us who are economic and finance guys can understand how TIF works and how it's generated and how it does and does not affect our school system and the things that the legislature have done to improve their effects on TIF, not to affect the school system as much. I think people really just don't understand what's going on with TIF. So I want to make sure when we have these public meetings, we get down and we try to go ahead and get it down to a brass tacks or a TIF for dummies, if you will, okay, out to the general public, because I believe sincerely that people don't understand how these work and how they can work to the benefit of the taxpayer. Because that's really why they were put in there. They're for the benefit of the taxpayer. And I think when we take a look at a lot of this stuff they go on, they don't believe it's to the benefit of the taxpayer. So those of us who live this every day and we get to hear these economic development deals understand what we're trying to do in the community, and we're doing it with a lot of thought and reason behind it before we do that. And I realize that we're not adding a TIF to this particular project if we choose to do that, okay, but a TIF does exist there. And we are going to rely upon that TIF to generate something to go ahead and pay that back, which I understand. I just want to make sure the general public understands that as well. So I would like to get some robust discussion in these public meetings, particularly as it relates to tax rate, public safety, public works, debt, and TIF in the schools. So those would be my comments. And if I don't have any other comments, I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion for first reading.
Hold on.
Yes.
So
Good,
I'm going to get,
Yep.
so you have first reading on the zoning orders. Let me just tell you about those
Do they need
types
to
of
go
things.
first?
They're going to go third on this, but
Okay.
so let me get back to the presentation here, and we will.
Sorry to jump the gun on you all
That's
night,
okay.
Tom.
No, I'm glad you were ready to roll there. But I think
I
somehow
don't stand still much. This is pretty long for me, so.
It's going backwards. Okay, so the text amendment. So we're on item 6 on the agenda now in front of you. So it's ordinance 4042-015E. And this is real quick. So this is the location of the project, is just south of the exit 210 off of I-69 and Southeastern Parkway. This is a blow-up of the project area. So you see the you see the Oleo roundabout. You see 136th Street roundabouts that lead to the west into the IU Saxony Hospital. And then you see Oleo Road running up and down the site to the east. Currently, it's in the Saxony PUD. It's in an area referred to as A2 mixed use. So in determining whether or not this project needed to have amendments to the PUD, the developer, as well as Republic Development, the developer of Saxony and city staff, sat down and said, looked at the project and said, looked at the standards in A2 and said what needed to change. We've already looked at the site plan, so we won't spend any time on that. There are 3 things involved in the request for rezone in the area. The first is parking, so we will get into those counts easily, into those parking counts in detail. And just to answer your question quickly, in addition to the 600 structured parking spots, because I know it's been talked about a lot, who's doing the math, 600 spots and 4,200 seats. There's an additional at least 600 surface spots on site, and then there's just the mixed-use parking on street in Saxony. So that'll be the Plan Commission's job to review that request and get their recommendation back to you on that. So that'll all be brought out on May 12th at the Plan Commission meeting. The second issue is density. Right now there's so many square feet of development per acre allowed in that A2 area, and it's 18,000 square feet per acre. This is denser than that, so this is a request to increase that density. And then finally, a request is to allow electric message boards for the project, and the staff's recommendation, as you probably saw in the report, is actually to remove that from this ordinance and sort of kick that to the city council committee that's looking at the electric reader boards, both small ones and larger ones like this request would be. So I think that's probably appropriate for that to be talked about there and brought back at a later time, not as part of this rezone ordinance, but certainly past May, and once the project is underway, if it gets approved, to talk about that. So that is the staff's recommendation. So with that, the ordinance is before you, Mr. President, for first reading. Go ahead and entertain a motion for first reading.
I'll make a motion. First reading.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so we will move that on to the Plan Commission on May 12th. So that takes care of item 6. The next item, which will stick with you, Mr. President, the City Council, relates to the first step in a tax abatement process. So in order to grant a specific user tax abatement, you have to say the area is eligible for tax abatement. And so tonight you're issuing what's called a declaratory resolution saying we are looking at doing this. And as I mentioned earlier, then notices go out to the taxing districts, and that eventually makes its way back to you on May 18th for final approval. So this, again, is the first step in that. I have no slides for it, Mr. President, so with that, I would turn it over to you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. If not, would request that you
So you're
call
after a motion and approval is what you're after?
Yeah,
Make a
on the
motion
declaratory
to approve.
resolution.
I got a motion from John.
Second.
Second from Eric. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Okay, we're just about done with this item, and I think we'll be able to move on to the other ones. So you need to pause for a second, Mr. President, and so now I'll address the redevelopment commission for the item that's before you. I know you have a staff memo before you, so you recall in the presentation, the economic development plan that's in existence out there in Saxony today for the TIF allows for things like the roads to be built, infrastructure to be built, those types of things. It does not specifically say, and no one was clairvoyant to know this project would come about, so the plan does not say that the TIF dollars can be used to pay a lease to provide for youth sports and a walking track. So as you see in what this does is, again, it's a lot like tax abatement. It's a declaratory resolution. It goes through a process and comes back to you. Then that process goes to the Plan Commission May 12th, then the City Council, and then it comes back to you. So this is a first step in that process. So with that explanation, I'd entertain any questions that you may have.
First, let me say thank you, Tom, and to the mayor as well for keeping us in the loop and meeting with us separately to go through this. So, any questions? From the commission? Yes, Karen, go ahead.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, question, you mentioned about 3 community-wide events that could be used in the facility, in the large facility. Would you, or have you thought about the possibility of graduation?
Great question. That was actually top of mind. We have talked about it. My understanding in conversations with Dr. Borf and Mike that it may not be quite big enough for that. I think the Pepsi Coliseum is probably more suited for it. We'd be happy to use one of those events for graduation if they can figure out how to make it work. But short of using the entire field house and putting out chairs, I'm not sure how we get it done. But absolutely, if there's an opportunity to do graduation there, we'd love to do it.
That's a great question. Any other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve FRC 01 R042015. Can I get a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Any old business or new business, please? Then I'll consider us adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Mr. President, the RDC has adjourned, and I'll turn the agenda back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, moving on in the agenda, we are on item number 8, I believe.
Council President Peterson, it might be advisable to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll move on. And then one other quick item: all of these documents will be on our website and additional information as well. So please, if you're a resident, go to our website to check that out.
Okay, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Gavel's back in. Let's roll, baby.
I'm going to go ahead and get council meeting started again, please. As long as it's okay with the mayor, I'll get back to the agenda. Item number 8, I believe. Request and adopt a resolution of the City of Fishers to approve the purchase property at 12175 Visionary Way. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. Big night tonight for the City of Fishers. A couple large projects, large concepts to think about. Tonight I'm before you with a unique opportunity once again to talk to you about taking the next step towards an entrepreneurial city. In my State of the City address, I mentioned that I think our vision for our community should be a smart, vibrant, entrepreneurial city. And if we could get the PowerPoint up here, that would be great. A couple things that I'd tell you. When we decided to become an entrepreneurial city and really redefine what 21st century economic development looked like, one of the things that we wanted to focus on was creating companies and creating an environment where companies could flourish and develop right here in our own city. And so out of that, and the partnership with John Wexler, a seasoned entrepreneur who has been in this field, been in this realm, has a passion for Fishers, has a passion for entrepreneurialism, we really started thinking about what does that manifest itself as? How do we move this community forward towards an entrepreneurial city? And the first big step we took was in 2012. In 2012, we had the opportunity to utilize 16,000 square feet of the bottom level of the municipal library just over here. And we stood this concept up on a shoestring budget, and we really asked ourselves, can we create an environment, and will it generate the type of entrepreneurial passion and culture and critical mass that we needed to move our city forward? Not really knowing if this could survive in a suburban environment. We know that Indianapolis and Mass Ave and Broad Ripple are where we think most of these creative types of things occur. So we asked ourselves, could we create it here in Fishers? And so we started with 16,000 square feet, a vision of what that co-location space could look like, and John went to work. And our goal after the first year was to have 100 members at Launch Fishers. After the first year, we had north of 200 members. The second year, our goal was to have 200 members, and we had north of 400 members. Today, we stand at a membership of 485 members. It has spurred a tremendous amount of growth in economic development here in Fishers. I can tell you firsthand, as we try to attract companies, one of the first stops that we take them is to Launch Fishers, whether they're a 5-person company or whether they're a 500 or 5,000 employee company. One of our stops is at Launch Fishers because we want to demonstrate just the type of entrepreneurial culture we have here. And so that is where we've been, creating this entrepreneurial vision. Where we are today, like we said, we have 485 members. The facility is no longer adequate for our needs. Parking is truly a difficulty. To be honest with you, we actually had one of our members get stuck in the mud because we do not have enough parking, which is a difficult problem to have. We have a wait list for dedicated space, so we literally have people who want to be a part of Launch Fishers, who want to have their own dedicated space to create their companies, and we just genuinely do not have enough room. The other component of this is we literally have 2 independent rooms for companies that have grown more than 2 or 3 employees, which is a problem because we want to see these folks further develop before they can move into longer-term real estate in our community. And so we've got some real space challenges here in Fishers in the current location. So where we're going. And John and I were on Inside Indiana Business this weekend, and we're trying to redefine what 21st century economic development looks like. Part of that is furthering this, if you will, the ground floor of this ecosystem that we're trying to create. We need to expand that. And so we've been looking at a facility for some time. It's the old DECA Financial Services building. They went through bankruptcy in this building, went through foreclosure. And the city started looking at this as an opportunity to move Launch Fishers into the next logical chapter, which is a larger capacity. Now, I am the government side of this. John is the entrepreneurial vision side of this. And I'm going to have him come up here and talk to you a little bit about what this new facility could mean going forward. The purchase price is a little over $3.1 million. We anticipate about $400,000 for renovation or build out. But before John gets up here, I also want to touch on something. We're going to have these folks talk a little bit after John gets done. But while we were doing this conversation about the next logical step for Launch Fishers physically, we always knew this was about people, place, and economics. And so Launch Fishers moving into this new facility is the place, but we're also really excited tonight to talk about the people. We have a vision to scale this much larger than what it is today in terms of working with our K through 12 education, going statewide and working with companies throughout the state of Indiana, continuing to further do entrepreneurial mapping and things of that nature. In order to do that, we were looking for a partner that had the scalability that we needed to do this. And we had to look no farther than Ball State University, who has a long, storied history of being a leader in entrepreneurship. And so we met with the president, the new president, President Ferguson, and his staff to talk about what could that partnership look like. And I think you'll be really excited tonight to hear from the Ball State members about what their vision is to be right there side by side with John and the city of Fishers as we move forward into this next exciting chapter of Launch Fishers, or Launch 2.0, if you will. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John Wexler, the CEO and founder of Launch Fishers, to talk a little bit about what this new facility could mean in terms of capability moving forward. John?
Thank you, Mayor Fadness, and thank you for your vision and ongoing support for this vision of Fishers as an entrepreneurial city, and thank you to this city council for your ongoing support and the predecessor town council that helped us birth Launch Fishers from the beginning. We have a handful of renderings just to give some sort of idea as to how this new Launch Fishers will help us, not only with the obvious of physical space to do more of what it is we do, but a palette with which we can continue to paint this picture of an entrepreneurial city. Programming needs to expand, events will continue to expand. In order for us to realize this vision for creating an entrepreneurial city, we need to continue doing the things that we've done the first 2.5 years with Launch Fishers. So what you'll see here, it looks like a bit of an eye chart. I'll try to walk you through some of the rooms and some of the build out that we're planning there. The beautiful thing about this is the facility is really already highly segmented by the nature of the business of the predecessor company. They had to have each line of business physically firewalled from another. So they were in the business of collection, debt collection. So mortgages had to be separate from healthcare, had to be separate from student loans, et cetera. So when we first walked through the building, we noticed all these, nicely defined little pods, if you will. Our idea is that those become great homes for entrepreneurial companies that are growing. One of the things that we are going to offer these companies that they really need most is favorable terms. They're okay paying market rent, but the really big challenge is when you have an entrepreneurial company that's growing. If you take, for instance, member number 1 at Launch Fishers, Blue Bridge Digital, that started with Santiago and his partner Adam, and they joined Launch Fishers, 2 of them. 6 months later, they were at 6 or 7 employees. A year later, or 6 months after that, they're sitting at 12 or 13. Today, they're at 30. Over that 2.5 year period, imagine how hard it would be to identify a lease and try to write that out as to, we're going to start with this 2-person area, then we're going to go to 6 in 6 months, and then 12, then 24, et cetera. That's an incredibly difficult thing for most entrepreneurs because you end up abandoning real estate that doesn't meet your needs, but you had no choice but to sign that lease to begin with. So having flexibility here is probably the special sauce that allows us to really make this environment come together. So you'll see a lot of different color-coded rooms. The entrance to the facility will be right in the center from the bottom, and you'll come in to our world-renowned coffee shop, probably one of the most beautiful humans on the history of the planet, in my mother, who is our lead barista there. So I tell everyone that, everybody loves their mom. Mom created my spinal column from scratch, right? So I truly love our barista and the support staff around our coffee shop. So you'll walk in to the Launch Fishers coffee shop, and that will be the first thing that you see, much in the same way it is today. From there, you'll see the common area across the bottom. That's the general co-working area. And then a little bit north of that, multiple rooms that range from 4-person clusters to 8 to 12-person rooms, so that as our companies grow, we can just continue to move them around Launch Fishers and meet their needs. And then at a certain point, they will launch out into their own space, much in the way Blue Bridge did, leasing 9,000 square feet in the Meyer Najum space. We will also have added conference space for special events and members that host meetups, et cetera. That's a really important part of any entrepreneurial community. So that's kind of a quick look at the space. And if there are any questions about that, I guess I can take those at the end. Or okay. So just a couple of other renderings to give you an idea of that awesome coffee shop we're going to have. You'll get a feel for, you walk right in, you'll be able to check in for a meeting or get direction to find a company that may be in this facility. Again, at 52,000 square feet, it's much more expansive than what we have today, so we're going to have to make provisions for how people get around and get connected to the meetings that they're looking for. This is another example of what we may look like off to the right as you walk in. We're going to try to design with a lot of glass to allow sunlight and daylight to continue to come through that building. It also has skylights in the top of it, which you can see in the center of that picture. So with that, I'll hand it over back to Mayor Fadness, and we'll address questions at the end. But thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, John.
One thing I'd like to mention before we get into the Ball State relationship, the location of this facility, to orientate you, if you know where Target is, if you go to the north of Target, there's a tech park that's been here for a number of years. And there's a large building that used to be the Schwab Call Center. It's over 100,000 square feet that's currently empty. And behind that is the DECA Financial Services Building. And I think it's important to note where the geography of this is for a couple reasons. One, we're keeping it in our downtown, so it continues to energize and keep all of those folks that go to Launch Fishers, and I see them biking every day to Wild Ginger or what have you for lunch. But more importantly, what I've seen over the last couple of years with Launch Fishers is a true desire by companies to want to be near Launch Fishers. It has a true halo effect. And that tech park back there needs revitalization. It's going to feed our downtown. It's an area that we don't want to see decline. The infrastructure is getting older. And we have an opportunity here to put something in there that can be a real catalyst for future development and future growth into our community. So I think it's really important to note the geography and the added benefit of what it can bring to our community long term. Along with this, we have a trail scheduled and funded in our budget to connect Sun Lake Apartments through this new facility, through Launch Fishers, that land there all the way down to downtown Fishers. So we're connecting a whole other part of our community into the downtown, which I think is really extraordinary. I can't tell you how excited I am about this next conversation about Ball State being a part of this, because so often I think all communities would recognize the fact that having higher education in your community is a great thing. But oftentimes we stop short at that, and that's all we say. Okay, we've got higher ed in our community, check the box. But here we have an opportunity to not only have higher education in our community, but that higher education organization is going to help us fulfill our vision of an entrepreneurial city. And I think that's really just an extraordinary alignment. So we're looking at having them have a presence in Launch Fishers with 3,000 square feet. I'll have the Ball State folks talk about what immersive learning can look like in entrepreneurship programs and resources for Launch members in Launch, Indiana. So with that, I'd like to ask Julie Halbig, the Vice President of Government Relations for Ball State, to come up and just talk a little bit about what this relationship will look like.
Thank you, Mayor, Mr. President, and City Council members. As Mayor Fadness said, my name is Julie Halbig. I'm Vice President of Government Relations at Ball State University. And joining me this evening is Dr. Michael Goldsby, who's a Stoops Distinguished Professor of Entrepreneurship and our Executive Director of our Entrepreneurship Center at Ball State. We're honored to be here with you tonight, and we're very excited about this partnership to discuss Ball State's commitment to Launch Fishers and the City of Fishers. All of you together in this room have helped create this dynamic entrepreneurial climate along with the mayor and John Wexler. And you can really feel the energy and the growth that's going on in your community, and we want to be a part of that, and we want to show our students what that looks like on a real-world basis. As many of you know, Ball State was founded by entrepreneurs and the Ball brothers, and we hope to create that kind of climate not only here but throughout the state, and we look forward to that partnership with Launch Fishers and Mayor and John and all of you. So one of the things that is part of our student-centered experience that we like to give our students while they're with us in an undergraduate environment is to immerse them with private companies if they can for an immersive learning project or an internship. It's a part of this drive that in order to get them to graduate on time in 4 years, we also want them to be career ready, to have all those soft skills that our employers are looking for out in the real world, but also to show them all the different stages that a company goes through, and that's what's so unique about this potential strategic partnership, and Dr. Goldsby can talk more about that. But we've also had a long-standing presence in the Fishers area. Many of you probably know the Fishers Center has been over in the Saxony development, and we hope to move some of our other programming over into this space as well so that we would also have some classroom space in addition to the partnership with Launch Fishers and immersing ourselves with many of these startup companies. So we look forward to this opportunity and look forward to being a regular anchor and tenant in Visionary Way, and thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Dr. Goldsby.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here tonight. I'll tell you a little bit about the Ball State Entrepreneurship Program. It's very unique. We're famous for what's known as a Shark Tank experience. So many of you have probably seen Shark Tank on TV. We've been doing something like that at Ball State for 31 years. To graduate from the Ball State Entrepreneurship Program, you have to work on a business idea develop it over 2 years, and then pitch it to a panel of entrepreneurs, executives, venture capitalists, bankers. And that board of external evaluators gives that student a thumbs up and they get to graduate, or a thumbs down, they fail, they don't graduate. You have to come back another year later and try again. And I can tell you over the history of the program, over 31 years, 25% of the students have not passed on that day, and they've had to come back and try it again. So we have a very high standard. Now, over the years, what I observed was that the students who did very, very well in the program, a lot of them tended to come from family business. And it dawned on me why that was. It was because not only did they grow up in the business, but also they had ideas from the family business to work on. So a lot of our really good projects were family business based. But then I came from a blue-collar family. I didn't grow up in a family business. And I thought, what about students like me that did not come from family business? What could we do to help them? So over the years, what we started doing was partnering them up with outside entrepreneurs or outside businesses. So the idea is this. If there's an entrepreneur or an outside business that has an idea they've been kicking around and they would like some help, we partner our students up with those entrepreneurs to co-develop the idea. And so what the entrepreneur gets is free labor. They get students basically working as interns for credit on their project for our classes. And by the way, our students take 7 courses around that idea. So it's a very well-developed idea. And with that, our students get immersed in the real world with an actual startup or an actual new venture in an existing business. So it's wonderful for the students. They get real experience, and a lot of them go on to either great jobs or they start a business, or what often happens, they actually get a job with that company. And I can tell you stories of that. There's a lady locally named Jan Long. I'm not sure if you know Jan, but she has a business called Mr. Canary. And Mr. Canary makes birdseed feeders. And it was doing very well, but she needed help getting into more retail outlets, and she wanted to get into more international market. So we partnered her up with one of our students, Nate Odell, and Nathan worked with her for 2 years, and at the end of those 2 years, she hired him, and now he's heading up the retail division for Mr. Canary, and he was also involved in getting a $1.8 million round of financing for that company. All they came from a Ball State entrepreneurship project. And we also had 2 students, again talking about the Fishers Connection, who had an idea for a app for nursing homes. So you could monitor your mother or grandmother or father or grandfather at the nursing home and find out what they're doing and find out what their medical care is going on right now. And so they invested out of their own money, these students, $15,000, and they turned to Launch Fishers for help from development to get the first round of the app going. So Ball State has a strong connection already with Fishers. There's a lot of natural synchronicity and going on here with this development, and I can't be more excited. For me, as an entrepreneurship professor, I've had to go out and find these partnerships. So I wear a lot of hats. I run the program, I teach classes, and to work with John Wexler, for him to provide us with actual companies in Fishers is a great assist to us. And more importantly, for our kids, they want to stay in Indiana. I can tell you the brain drain a lot of times comes down to opportunity. I've got kids that leave to go to New York City or California, but when you ask them, they said if they could have found something in Indiana, they would have stayed. Because one thing you know about Hoosiers, I mean, I've been a Hoosier my whole life, we tend to stay in Indiana if we have the choice. And I can tell you that most of our kids would love to stay in Indiana, and a lot of them actually are from Fishers. So I can't be more excited about the potential of this project. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to ask Tom Dickey, our Community Development Director, to step forward and talk a little bit about the due diligence. This is a real estate transaction. The purchase agreement is before you tonight. And I'd like to ask Tom to talk a little bit about just the logistics behind this. Tom?
Thanks, Mayor. If we can pull back up the PowerPoint, I would appreciate that. Okay, so we've been tracking this property for a while, as I think a number of you on the City Council know. I think even probably, I'm sure it was back before the end of the year. Decca Financial Services was in bankruptcy, and we knew that a local bank had the note on the building. And so we've worked with our legal counsel to kind of figure out our way through that and figure out how to get to the owner of the note, which is actually a hedge fund in Texas. And so The firm is referred to as Hudson Advisors. That's not who's on the contract. It's some weird Navy R3LO something LLC, which is a single purpose entity they created to own the project. They recently foreclosed on the note and are in the process of obtaining a sheriff's deed, which is that we're in contact daily now with the sheriff's office trying to figure out why the deed hasn't been recorded because the sheriff's sale has occurred. And so we approached Hudson Advisors, Mayor Fadness and I, several months ago about talking to the city of Fishers rather than doing what a hedge fund would typically do, which is foreclose on the property, get the deed, hire a real estate broker, and go to the market and market it. And time is of the essence, as you heard from John Wexler and from Mayor Fadness with respect to where Launch Fishers is today. And B, we thought that would result in a higher price. And so we've been negotiating with the hedge fund to purchase it without them having to go to that expense. And Mayor Fadness did a good job of sort of explaining what the cost they would be saving by doing a deal with us. And so we've got to that point. We agreed upon a price, which is $3.1 million for the real estate. And then just another piece of this transaction, which is really positive for the city, is there is a, this is a technical term, there's a bunch of personal property in that building that's very valuable for Launch Fishers operations. That includes computers, that includes monitors. Those might be the least things that some of the entrepreneurs need because a lot of time they have their own technology. But there's workstations, there's security. A lot of these segmented areas that John referred to are already fobbed off and with a system that can be reconfigured for the right security. So as part of the negotiation with them for an additional $12,500, we acquired all of that property. So the purchase price in the contract is $3,112,500. And so we, for that, you're acquiring the real property and all the personal property within the building. So as part of the process, when we first started negotiation, we went out and got what's called a broker's opinion of value, which is not near an appraisal because you don't pay for it. So they're not doing the research as a appraiser will do. But we wanted to get a feel. We had a gut feel. We thought we knew the market. We wanted to get a feel from a broker as to what the building would be valued at. That BOV, or broker's opinion of value, came back with a range of $3.1 to $3.6 million. And so we were really happy to end up on the lower end of that. Then as we got the feeling that Hudson Advisors was really interested in doing a project with us, we had 2 appraisals commissioned, and I have both of those back, and I'll want to make sure that these are entered in the record for tonight. But the appraisals, one came in at $2.8 million, the other came in at $3.57 million, and these don't include the personal property, just the real property. The average of those 2 appraisals is $3,185,000, which is above the price that you're paying for it, or you would be paying for it if you enter in this contract, and that is a requirement of state law. That in order for the city council to simply go buy a piece of property, it has to be lower than the averages 2 appraisals, so it meets that standard. We also have done a couple of things. We've had a contractor that is very accustomed to rehabbing these kind of buildings, although this building, rehab's probably way too strong of a word because it's in great shape for our use, but just looking at the roof, looking at the HVAC, looking at the exterior walls to see if there's any water penetration, those types of things. We've had that accomplished and got some cost estimates to kind of get the building ready to go. And those numbers are very low, so we were happy to see that. As John Wexler and the mayor continue to work on the build-out, we'll refine those estimates. But as the mayor said, the budget for those improvements is $400,000, and we plan to stick to that budget. So that has occurred as well. So we're also having typical due diligence done. So we're having title done, we're having survey done, we're having a phase 1 environmental done. I think the only issue that might be discussed in that report, and we'll deal with them when it gets here, is there's a generator on site, which is very much a positive for a building like this, and I suspect it'll be actually used and online for some of the tech companies that want to be there. But that also just means that the phase 1 analyst who's looking at it, doing the assessment, needs to make sure where's the fuel, how's it fired, have there been any leaks, anything reported to IDEM over the years. So all that's occurring, and we'll have 30 days once this contract is signed to make sure that environmental is in good shape. So I think from a due diligence perspective, we're doing all the things that you would expect us to do when you purchase property. The contract has a 30-day due diligence period, so assuming it's approved tonight, we would find, I think it needs to be signed by the president and perhaps one other. We would get the right signatories, get it signed, 30-day clock would start, and we would move on from there. So what I want to do is just spend a second just going through dates again, kind of like we did with earlier on the sports project, what's going to happen. So assuming it's approved tonight, which is the 20th, We would move forward, get the contract executed, dated tomorrow. It's subject only to title, survey, and environmental. It's not subject to financing, and we'll talk about financing here in just a second. But what you'll be proving tonight is the city purchasing the property. Between now and May 17th, the next meeting, as you know, the Finance Committee has been talking to the mayor about this and just strategizing on whether to use cash reserves, which the city, as you know, has, to purchase the property, or whether to use traditional bank financing to purchase the property. With record low interest rates, I know it may make, at least I know for sure it makes sense to consider using bank financing to finance the transaction. So that's something that the Finance Committee and the mayor will be working on over the next number of days and weeks. And so the plan would be by May 18th to have the Finance Committee and the mayor make a recommendation to you and come back to you at the 18th and then take an action on how you're going to pay for the building. So tonight's step is you're contracting to buy the building. The next step would be, are you going to use your cash reserves to do it, or the city's cash reserves, or are you going to use some bank financing or some combination thereof? Due diligence would expire then on May 21st, and the closing would occur, unless there's issues with title, we would have to negotiate. Closing would occur within 10 days after that, really, so by the end of May, we would close on the acquisition of the property and own that building. Then the next step that would be required is for the city to enter into a lease with Launch Fishers, and that is not before you tonight, and that also is something that the mayor and the city council, along with John Wexler, will need to craft over there have certainly been concepts talked about over the last few months, and some of those are in writing, but we need to sort of get down to specifics and get that documented, and so there'll be plenty of opportunity for you all to understand that process and engage in that discussion with respect to the lease of the property to Launch Fishers. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council? Go ahead, Rich.
I would like to make a comment for the benefit of the public, because I think what has started with John and Scott and the council members who were before me is terrific. And the momentum truly is the envy of almost the state of Indiana and probably nationally and regionally. So I am very supportive to keep the momentum going. But I guess my comments relate to creating structure going forward that provides the greatest flexibility for us as a city. And I guess I just want the public to make sure that they understand. And my comments come as a real estate owner and also now as a council member looking out for our best interests. But, and I understand there'll be that opportunity, and I appreciate that, but I just want members of the public to recognize that one of the things that we need to make sure we're trying to create the most flexibility for is to optimize the exit ability when there is the purchase of the facility. And what that means is, the ultimate either disposition or maybe the hold, but making sure that the lease is structured in a way that creates the most flexibility. It could be a private investor that ends up being the buyer, and that would be great because then they would be paying taxes to us as a community. But certainly making sure that all of these things, even from a finance standpoint, if we do it separately, outside of cash reserves, provide a structure that doesn't tie our hands unnecessarily. So I know there's been enough discussion thus far with council that people are supportive, but I also wanted to make mention of that so that the public appreciates that too.
I think Councilmember Block has brought up some terrific ideas on how to structure this, and we look forward to working with him and the entire council on putting a lease in place that does just that, provides flexibility to the taxpayer and to the residents. I'd be remiss if I did not also mention, I forgot to mention earlier, that our formal application to the State Indiana Economic Development Group for a certified tech park is officially in. And what that is there's a program through the state IEDC where a geographical area in a community can be designated a certified tech park. When you're granted that certification, what happens is you're able to capture the incremental increase in state income and state sales tax that's generated from that area and capture that up to the amount of $5 million. That $5 million then can be used for various items in your certified tech park, one of which is the repayment for a purchase of a building for an incubator. So the idea here, long term, I think this is a sound investment and it stands on its own. But one of the other areas that we're going to be pursuing very aggressively is that we get that certified tech park designation. We're able to capture those state sales and income tax revenue. That's not local sales and income tax revenue, that's state sales tax. We're able to collect that and use that money to repay the city for the facility. And I think that would just be a tremendous opportunity. I think what we're doing here in our community fits the Certified Tech Park program to a T. So we are working on that, and that is a tremendous opportunity moving forward. And that application has been formally submitted to the state of Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm glad you pointed out, and Stuart, I'll let you go. I just want to jump in on one comment you made there, because I want the public to understand that your mayor found this like on a Sunday night when he had, could be playing with his kid and being with his wife. He's on the computer researching ways to go ahead and make sure that your tax dollars are best spent. And he told me that story, and I just chuckled because I
have no life.
That's a guy that we elected. So, before I turn it back over to Stuart, I know certainly there's 2 Ball State grads in the room, myself and the president of your trustees sitting in the front room, that welcome Ball State into the community should we get this done. And just to go ahead and date myself, I was that guy 31 years ago who took that first class from Dennis Kakos at Ball State. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stuart.
And we'll ask Pete later if he was in the 75%. 75%.
Here.
Yes, thumbs up, thumbs up. No, I think Rich said it at the beginning, but I want to, we always want to take these opportunities, especially when John's before us here, to acknowledge the great work that John's been doing in leading launch Fishers, and really Mayor Fadness and the combination of the two. Really, you talk about 2012, but the genesis of the idea before that, and the council supporting it. But really, the two of you, and then all the participants have really made launch a reality. So thank you again, and for that continued work and your continued investment of passion and time. I want to maybe ask also that maybe at a later time in May or later too, there's, the success of 1.0 has been so great in the use of the library. What's the vision for that? Is it an annex, or, what's the utility of that? And if it's going to be maybe transitioned over to the new site, that sort of aspect. But I think the combination of Launch 2.0, if that's what it will be branded as, is really this addition of Ball State and the entrepreneurial aspect really ties in, seems like a perfect marriage here of this opportunity. I would like to maybe ask the Ball State representatives if they could take away, an opportunity to study more of, from an academic point of view, either we'll call it longitudinal study or others, but put together a program with John and to start to look at how to analyze the value of that, so that could be published in peer-reviewed journals and other types of things that would also document the value, not only to the city but to the state and beyond, of this great idea, and the way in which this idea has manifested itself, and what we think is going to be the true success of it, and the accelerator of bringing value, not only of creating innovation, but bringing value to the community. And if we can get more of a robust study of that in partnership, rather than, we've been very pleased to see that this was a leap of faith with some very passionate people, but we've seen it manifest itself with success. Now that success, John highlighted one company that would be moving out, and there are others like it. But if we can have a robust analysis of that, I think that would serve us well. We know this is going to go for a number of years, so you can get a couple of PhD theses out of it, or other types of published work out of it. So really would appreciate that consideration as we start off with this partnership.
Well, I think one of the core values that I know Ball State and John and I have is to share this recipe, if you will, with the state of Indiana. And so Senator Kenley is working right now to put money in the budget, in the state budget, over I think $1 million, to help fund programs like this statewide. And we want to play as big a role as Senator Kenley will allow Launch Fishers and Ball State. We want to be able to provide this value and be a thought leader throughout the state of Indiana, to sit down with elected officials. John and I, to be honest with you, are actually headed to Terre Haute at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning to work with their folks on starting a Launch Terre Haute. And that kind of commitment and being a thought leader in the state, I think, bodes well for Fishers long term.
Any comments from council?
I think I just appreciate, my kids come home when they're talking about entrepreneurship, they're hearing in school. That's amazing. That's something that I never heard in school growing up. And so for them to come home and talk about Lemonhead and then go take them to the movies downtown here on Friday night and see Lemonhead running around, it's hard to put a price on that. And to have the partnership with Ball State, to see you can have your kids, you can raise a family here in Fishers, go through our school understanding entrepreneurship, go to potentially Ball State, being able to be partners with them, and to see that grow in our community, and then they just come back right around and plant their businesses, and that brain power, that entrepreneur spirit in our community back here, and not have to go hunt for jobs around the country. So I think, to me, this is a no-brainer. This is something that I'm very supportive of, because when you look at it, you see the difference you can make in a young person's life. You're right now, you're also working on a community health, mental health initiative. And I can tell you that one key thing with that is for young people to have purpose changes the dynamics in people when they are dealing with issues in life. When they have purpose, there's a greater chance of success. And so I think that this kind of marries a lot of different areas within our community. Driving over to the area for this DECA building, seeing how it's kind of run down, it's abandoned, crime can happen there. I went one time and we found a door that had been broken into, and so to transform our young people, transform our community for the future. There's just this, to me, this is a no-brainer. So I'm in strong support of this.
David?
Yeah, real quick, obviously a full supporter, and I commend John and Scott and Tom for all of your negotiations. Just real quick, in my past life, most people know I did a lot of traveling to kind of the tech or the idea hotbed, so I think Launch Fishers does the exact environment to create the next thing, and we don't know what that is, but it's, one of these days, we're going to get more and more. By having that space, we'll have that. The other thing I point out real quick is I love the Ball State connection, and here's why. People in Indiana, I think, don't realize how well-known Ball State is. I know we talked about entrepreneurship, but when I went to Seattle, Austin, Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta, all those cities, and I hired an architecture firm, it always had a Ball State architect. So people know Ball State throughout the country. So this is a Purdue and Butler guy. Give me a little bit of kudos. So that's a great asset, I think, to have in this community. Now, with that said, I'm going to flip topics real quick. It's a big number, so I agree with the 3.1. I think that it makes sense. And then Tom, obviously, kudos on. I don't think people realize how much of what's in there really has no value to somebody else, but has a huge value, I think, for what John will use. The raised floor to be able to compartmentalize and move things around. I think that you'll see the benefit right off the bat. So I'm fine with that number, but real quick. Especially when we were a town and then now going to a city, we've always had the cash reserves, and the cash reserves have always been to a certain level. We're a little bit above that, but I just want to caution everybody that is set up so that in good times you have it, you set it up and you maintain it, so that in bad times it's there. So I just want to caution, whether it's this or other projects in the future, we do have a metric that we had that in the previous. This is not a town anymore, but I think it's important to have that, because when bad times comes and recessions happen, they happen every 10 years or so, that we are set up for that. So I think it's important as we look through financing or using some of the cash reserves, whether it's this one or another project, that we try and hold and maintain that. And then the other thing would be, I know that you guys are looking through that, but as you look at a bigger Launch Fishers, you're going to have multiple separate tenants, new tenants. And we talked about before, as we go through on the financing, you've got a certain budget to get it fit up. I know that you guys are looking at this, but it's just important to take that to a next step and make sure that each tenant, they're going to say, hey, I want it to a certain level. And does that conform to what your overall budget is? Right. You know what I mean? So it's just important to make sure that everything...
No, I appreciate that, and I can tell you that the Finance Committee is working hard to make sure that the expenditure is done in a responsible way. I certainly think financing will be the way to move forward. We do have adequate cash reserves, but we do have the purchase of the school land and other items that we're looking at. So I know the Finance Committee is working hard on this, and Oscar, our controller, we're all making sure that this is a responsible purchase. And then as for the tenant build out and things of that nature, John and I have had lots of conversations about what the actual budget is. John's an entrepreneur at heart, so where there's ways to generate revenue and cut costs, we're going to do it. And the long-term goal here, honestly, is to be sustainable, to have no annual subsidies from the city to launch Fishers. We think that's an attainable goal. If we do that, we've cut our annual operating costs by $100,000, which can be shifted over to paying the lease payment. So I think there's a lot of opportunities here to be creative and really make this a win-win, just like we did at the library.
Certainly, this has been a real fun process. I remember 3 years ago walking in the basement with the mayor and John and walking through and talking about the vision of what this could be. And I asked for some things, some accomplishments, and I've got 17 really big items, and I could sit here and read them all night, but it's 9 o'clock and I'm getting hungry. But if you look at there's many articles out. I've read many articles in the Wall Street Journal that talk about these type of startups are dwindling, and whereas our community, they're thriving and they're expanding, and you just walk through Launch Fishers and see what's going on there. This is the next step, and I'm fully supportive of what we're doing here to acquire this building, to create that next iteration of Launch Fishers, and I know and expect John will have it full probably by August or September, you think? So I'm not going to sit here and read all 14 of these. There's some great accomplishments that this organization has done for Fishers. So very excited, very supportive, and looking forward to moving forward on this. Thank you.
If there's no more comments, go ahead, Art.
Yeah, I too am supportive and try not to repeat and regurgitate what everybody else has said, but I think what really is great about this project, it unlocks both ends of the economic development spectrum. And we can recruit and retain and relocate, the 500, 1,000, 1,500 companies, but we can also generate startups, successful startups, and that allows us to play in the whole spectrum of economic development. And with the partnership with Ball State, I think Todd mentioned it pretty well, this creates a culture and a DNA and a fabric of innovation and potential, and again, like Todd said, that really resonates with the young people and learning how to run a business and unleashing their dreams.
With no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 8R042015A.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Todd, second by Stewart. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approves unanimously.
Well, I want to take a moment and thank the council for your support. I think it's really going to be profound when people see when a legislative body and executive body, the school system, and the community are aligned in a vision, what the capabilities are, and I think it's going to be extraordinary. So thank you for your support and your leadership on this.
Thank
you for your hard work.
Moving on to item number 9, ordinance number 021615. Request to approve rezone property located in northeast corner 104th Street and Oleo Road from R2 to C2, second and third reading. They took it off. I've got new ones on here.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Stotts. I'm a planner in the Department of Community Development. I'm here tonight to present the 104th and Oleo Street rezone request. The request tonight is to rezone the subject property from R2 residential to C2 commercial in order to build a small neighborhood retail building. We're looking at one lot on 2.17 acres. And as you can see from the map here, we're located in the Geist area. Again, the northeast corner of 104th here in Oleo. If you zoom in a little bit, you'll see the current zoning for the land. Again, is R2. To the north, we have some C2 commercial real estate there, and then just north of that, we have the subdivision Weatherstone. On the west side, we have Springs of Cambridge, and then to the south, we have Geist Elementary School. In 2010, Hamilton County realigned the intersection of 104th and Oleo Road with the entrance to Springs of Cambridge community. As you can see here in the 2009 map, we had the offset intersection here. And in 2010, the realignment resulted in the 2.14 acres being shifted from the south side of 104th Street to the north side. So it has the appearance that it belongs with this C2 as it sits today. As you'll see in the petitioner's packet, they've shown you their desire to, again, build a 7,000 square foot retail center. The parking will predominantly be located between Oleo and the building. The entrance to the existing retail center just to the north will be reconstructed and reconfigured to have more of a north-south entrance. And then the main portion of the building, again, will face the west there. Although the petitioner has shown their desire to build a retail center, I do remind you that tonight the request is to rezone the property to straight C2. So all the uses that you see here on the side will be available on the site if the council so chooses to approve. I also show this slide to point out that you'll see several asterisks there, which are next to generally the fast food, the takeout restaurants, ice cream shop. And the reason I draw that to your attention is to inform you that there are extra standards currently in the Unified Development Ordinance, which would restrict a coffee house or a restaurant from having exterior menu boards, speakers, and a drive-up window, which would be associated with those uses. So that restriction is in place and it would apply to this rezone. However, there could be a potential to see drive-up windows, menu boards, and speakers for the other commercial uses, which you saw on the previous slide. So I'd just like to point that out to you and some of the surrounding property owners curious of that standard as well. During the process, one use that staff was not comfortable with was the fuel cells and station. We asked that the petitioner commit to not having that as a permitted use as this rezone, and they've agreed to that. The petitioner also held a neighborhood meeting back in March. The neighbors which attended that meeting had also requested that packaged liquor sales be prohibited with this rezone, and the petitioner has agreed to that as well. So along with this rezone request, you'll also see in your packets that there is a commitment document in there which restricts again, the fuel station sales, packaged liquors, and then one other was added, which is the sale of dry cleaning products. Okay. With any rezone, we ask that the council be mindful and pay reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan, the current conditions and character of the current structures and uses with each district, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adopted in the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. Finally, reasonable development and growth. So staff has provided this information in your packets, and I won't read that out loud today. Staff is supportive of the project. We feel is the best use of the land as a result of the 104th Street realignment. Again, you'll see the prohibited uses there. With that, I'll turn it over to Steve Harden, who is representing the petitioner tonight, and offer that staff is here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner in the law firm of Faegre Baker Daniels and a proud resident of the city of Fishers. Wow, what a great evening that you had tonight. That was pretty exciting. Thank you, Kevin, for your work on this project. I've been pleased to represent GBW LLC, Mr. Gary Worsler, right over here. Many of you know Gary, Fishers resident as well. Quite experienced in retail development, has I think about 90,000 square feet of retail space within about 2 or 3 miles of this location. All of it is completely leased. So he is somebody that does understand the leasing business and the market trends of what will be successful where. The only thing I had as a clarification, it is exactly true that when we had our neighbors meeting, really the only request from that neighbors meeting was to add a commitment to restrict packaged liquor sales. We agreed to do that. We put it into the commitment. That version of the commitment that's in your packet omitted that as a fourth restriction. We've emailed that to Kevin. That's on the record that we've agreed to that, and that is part of the commitments. I just wanted to clarify that as well, and would be happy to answer any questions. And I think the fourth one came from the council at first reading, had a question about the on-site dry cleaning plant versus a dry cleaners, and so we've specifically excluded the on-site dry cleaning plant, and that's also in there. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Just maybe that last point, not to get caught up in, the language there, but if many dry cleaners, just has storefronts where you drop things off, they send them off, and then they get processed off-site somewhere, and then they're, of course, brought back and you collect them there. That would be perfectly within scope.
That's correct. That's permitted. Thank you.
And then some retail stores would sell liquor, but wouldn't be or beer, wine, things of that nature. That, if it's not a dedicated packaged liquor store.
No, it's packaged liquor sales. So it's not a liquor store. It's, anybody that's selling packaged liquors. That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Harden?
I have a quick question. I was just curious as to were there any suggestions from the residents as to what they'd like to see in that property? And I was wondering if there was a general idea of what kind of businesses were going to go there.
There was, I would say, 25% of the people actually that were attended the meeting. It was a low turnout, but the one gentleman who was very active in land use and planning and lived in the neighborhood just to the
north.
Yeah, just over here to the, lives right over in this neighborhood. They would love to see a coffee shop with a drive-through. So we're not proposing a coffee shop with a drive-through, but they did ask about that. And then we had a neighbor that had asked a question that lived over here. We think that they were happy about having this, the drive relocated because it was so much closer right now to the neighbors right here. They'd asked whether or not we could add some additional trees in that green space on the concept plan, and Gary Worcester agreed to do that, and that's reflected on the concept plan as well.
That's been a question of a drive-through coffee place is something that a lot of people have approached me wondering why Fishers doesn't appear to want to have something like that. But it's interesting, it looks like a lot of people want it, so I was just wondering on your take on that. And
yeah, there was, and I know it's late, but there was, Stuart was here. Who else might have been? David was probably there early 2000s, 116th and Oleo. Really, that back then, the planning department was encouraging not to have drive-throughs at those neighborhood retail nodes. And after the fact, our former planning director would often share with me the story of the only complaint that he ever got from the public was how come there wasn't a restaurant with a drive-through or a Starbucks with a drive-through? And that was because it was not allowed. So it's interesting what you hear from people.
Part of what happened here too was the site just to the north actually came in through the county, but back, I think a lot of the drive-throughs are really just it was really 116th and Oleo. It was to keep, at that time, to keep, different fast food restaurants. I know there's some other nuances that have come through, but that was, I think, the main genesis of it. Real quick, question that I had was, you covered the dry cleaners, and thank you for doing that. That's a big difference from one to the other. And then the liquor sales, I see you've got that added. But then at the Plan Commission, there was a gentleman from the site to the north that I know that there were negotiations going on in between the connection. Did that get resolved? Is that on
that is, let me see how best to do that. So last year, when the bank took back this property, they conveyed this outlot to an entity called Think LLC, Steve Ramos' company with his wife, and they have a plan to do some type of a preschool or daycare on that facility. It hasn't actually gone forward yet. So we've been in agreement or negotiations with the bank and with Mr. Ramos and his property for that relocation. There's an existing access easement, and so we think most everybody involved sees the benefit and the utility of relocating that entrance. There's existing access easement, and so we're in the process of finalizing that. It's not been finalized yet, but what I think is close to the final draft has been circulated.
Okay, so he's more the outlot, because I was thinking that he, and maybe I didn't understand his role, but I was thinking that he was for the retail building.
No.
Because right now that drive comes out, And I thought I just didn't want to have everybody pointing at each other, whether you move the drive to where they showed on their site plan. So that's not the case.
No.
It's just the connection from that.
Yeah, it's making sure that there's currently an access easement between the different property owners, and the school is even involved in that. As part of that existing drive is on the school's property.
Right.
And so that's just having to work through those issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Any other questions for staff?
Make a motion to suspend rules and approve on third reading.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from John. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I don't believe we have to have public. Do we have to have public input?
No, it's not public hearing, it's public input.
No. Unless Chris tells me I have to. Do we need public input? Okay. And then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve 021615, ordinance.
Motion by David. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by John. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then I've got a discrepancy here on my written agenda and the one that's online. So do we remove the item for Mr. Henke, Judge Henke?
Yes.
That item's been removed. Okay, well, we probably should have told the judge that before he hung around all night, but thank you for being here, Judge.
I was having
Okay.
a flashback.
Good to see you. All right, so now that we've got that taken care of, we'll move on to item number 9. I think we just did 9, didn't we? Okay, so item 10, 042015, request to annex property.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Adam Zaklakowski, a planner with the Community Development Department. I have the next 5 items, so we'll try to run through these as quickly as possible in the interest of time, but if I go a little too fast or you have any questions, definitely let me know. So the first item is the Mid-State Truck Equipment Annexation. This particular project is located in the southwest section of Fishers. It's off of Allisonville Road. If we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see that the property, it's at the northwest corner of Easy Street in Allisonville, and it's in a pocket of unincorporated territory surrounded by Fisher city limits. So as the reason for this annexation, it's a 7-acre site, again owned by Mid-State Truck Equipment, and a new 16,000 square foot office and maintenance facility would be constructed on the site. So as part of that project, they would be connecting to the city sewer system, and that's one of the primary reasons for annexing. So a portion of the property was rezoned from C1 to C3 with restrictions back in July of last year. This is a 100% voluntary annexation. It meets all of the contiguity requirements that are established by state law. And in accordance with state law, we will present a written fiscal plan at third reading before adoption of the annexation ordinance. It should be noted that city services such as fire and police are essentially already being provided to the site, so annexation will enhance the revenue collection to defray some of the cost of providing those services. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. A quick question for our attorney. It looks like we're doing first, second reading, and a public hearing tonight.
That's correct.
Do we need to suspend the rules to do first and second reading?
No, we do not,
Thank you.
because you're not going to be voting on the final
Okay.
action.
Is there any questions for staff?
Yeah, real quick, the only question I had, Adam, this obviously was rezoned, like you said. I remember going through that, and then this is just the step, so I guess they're getting ready to start. So did anything change on their site plan? The reason I ask is the site plan, as I remember, I think it went back about 2/3 of the way with moving buildings and things, but then the back third, there were a lot of residents that were just watching that, and they were okay as long as it went back to a certain distance. So was their overall plan still about the same?
To the best of my knowledge, the plan has not substantially changed at this point. If anything, I guess I'll let Rick.
Let me interject. For the record, my name is Rick Brandow, Assistant Director of Community Development. Dale Davis, who is out in Seattle with a number of our planners at their national convention. This is his project. He brought it through earlier. We just met with them last week, I believe it was. They have substantially changed it. Instead of it being a freestanding building, they are going to add an addition to the existing, and the footprint is substantially changed, reduced in size. So it is not going, it's not going much further west than the existing building.
I think that was David's key point is, you know, if you forget how many, but the site, the usage of the site, does it encroach further into towards the neighbors? That's what your question.
That's right.
In all fairness, as I said, it's an addition to the existing. I do recall it going a little further west, but not much at all. We can sure share a concept plan at the next reading.
Okay. I mean, that building's so far east that if it does, then that, I mean, that gives me comfort that I think what they were saying is probably what's going to happen. Okay.
Any other questions for staff? I'll open it up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no public input, I will close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
Have first, second reading.
Thank you. You still up, Adam? Item 11?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next item before you is another annexation. This is known as the Granite Ridge annexation. So to refresh your memory on this project, it's located northwest of I-69 off of 126th Street and Promise Road. As you can see from this exhibit, the property is surrounded on three sides by current city limits. So more specifically, this involves about 21 acres that are all owned by Joseph Wendell. The Granite Ridge PUD was approved by council back on March 16th, and that was at the request of Bedrock Builders. The primary plat was approved by the Plan Commission on March 10th. And of course, similar to the last case, this project would be connecting to, in this case, it would be Hamilton Southeastern Sewer, but it's still a municipal or a sewer system as opposed to septic. Part of the project includes a Crown Castle lease cell tower site. It's a very small site. It's about 0.08 acres. It's right in this area over here where the cursor is. And that is owned by a woman named Tandy Lewis. Again, this is a 100% voluntary annexation, and it meets those contiguity requirements. And as with the previous case, we will present a written fiscal plan at third reading before adoption of the ordinance.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions for staff? We'll go ahead and open it for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this topic, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
First, second reading.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, 42015B.
The next item before you is for a rezone called the Reserve at Lantern. This particular project involves a rezoning from ER, also known as estate residential, to PUDR. It involves approximately 22 acres, and it's located on the north side of 126th Street between Allisonville Road and Lantern Road. The petitioner on this project is Beezer Homes. So as you can see here, the project is just north of where we are today. It's north of the Sunblessed community. Taking a look at the zoning map, you can see that the project is zoned ER, and then it's surrounded by a variety of residential densities, generally R3, R2, and even R1 nearby. In terms of the existing topography on the land, there are 4 parcels, and there are a couple of existing homes on the property. The house that's at the northeast corner of the property in this area over here would stay with the development. The rest of the structures would be demolished. The exhibit on the right shows the concept layout. Of course, this is 126th Street down here. We just have 2 local streets coming off of 126th. Just to get into some of the specifics on the project, it's a 38-lot, single-family residential subdivision, and it will be marketed towards the empty nester demographic. The density on the project is approximately 1.7 dwelling units per acre. That's actually less than the R3 target of 2.0 dwelling units per acre. However, in terms of the lot sizes, the lot sizes are more comparable to an R4. So they're looking to do 9,100 square foot lots. The minimum in R4 is 10,000 square feet. In terms of some key architectural features that Beazer is looking to implement, they're looking to have fiber cement siding, deeper roof overhangs, and enhanced garage doors. Lastly, tree preservation and conservation has been looked at with the petitioner, and this also includes a 20-foot buffer along the east side of the property over here where the cursor is, and that would include a row of evergreen trees that would be planted in that area. So with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. The petitioner and their attorneys are here as well. Thank you.
Adam, is that part of Fishers, or is that unincorporated area? Do we need to be annexing this? Yes, it is Fishers? What is it?
It is in unincorporated Hamilton County right now.
So we need to annex?
We will annex.
Okay.
Correct.
Just checking. Thank you.
Any question for staff? Go ahead, Rich.
Just a clarification, Adam. You mentioned that the project would feature certain size homes. I know that's been represented, but I guess what will be committed to with the application for lot sizes, home sizes, and things? Are any of those things that are represented actual commitments?
Well, Mr. Block, in terms of the minimums and maximums that are provided in the PUD, those would be the framework development standards.
But that is the commitments then that are being made?
Yeah, so for example, the minimum lot size is 70 feet, I believe.
I thought it was 65. Right.
So the minimum lot width at the building line is 80 feet. Minimum lot frontage is 40 feet, for example. If it's near a cul-de-sac, the lot needs to be a little bit narrower. There are a variety of different side and rear setbacks. Maximum impervious surface coverage is 50%, and there's a minimum square footage for 1-story and 2-story homes. So those would be the parameters that they'd have to work within.
They can. Any other question for staff, or we can have the petitioner come up for comments as well? Okay, no other questions for Adam right now? Don't go far, Adam. Maybe the petitioner wants to come up and say a couple things.
Yep, I think. Did you want to use this?
Okay. Good evening, members of the council. My name is John Dobashewitz. I'm a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent Beazer Homes in their request to rezone this property. With me here this evening is Amanda Deerdorf with Beazer Homes, Jim Schinover, an attorney with our office, and other members of our development team. In light of the hour, we'll be brief. Adam gave a good overview of the project. Beazer has reached out to members of the council and will continue to reach out. We plan on conducting a neighborhood meeting on May 7th in advance of the Plan Commission public hearing. Have met with neighbors as late as this evening at about 6:30, 6:45 before your meeting. Had a good dialogue with them and hope to continue to work and meet on site to address some of their pre-preservation and conservation requests along our west perimeter of the proposed subdivision. With that, I'll turn over the presentation to Amanda Deerdorf, who would just like to take a couple minutes to talk about Beazer's request at this location.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of Town Council. Again, my name is Amanda Deerdorf, Vice President of Land Acquisition for Beazer Homes. John asked me to speak just a moment tonight regarding the product and the new home plan, new designs. We are tasked truly with complementing this site. It is such a beautiful kind of unique infill site in the heart of Fishers, and we're tasked with complementing it with an equally pair, if you will, of great design. Quality home built with quality materials. Specifically, when we were examining the market, we saw a void in the market for this demographic, for the empty nester, active adult market. But then also, if you live west of 37 and you want to stay kind of in your bubble, in the area where you go to the grocery and the dry cleaner and your salon and your routine and routes to work and that sort of thing, if you wanted to downsize or right size, as they say nowadays, there really is no supply. And so we feel as though this development solves a dilemma for the city of Fishers in establishing a community of quality homes to meet that need. In particular, we have the ability at Beazer Homes to design product from the ground up. So we started first with focus groups of consumers as well as realtors, and really tried to hone in on their needs and wants and really anticipate their needs for a future, as well as look to trends for home building. We do have 4 plans. They range anywhere to answer kind of, I think, the question you were looking for, potentially, Mr. Block, 2,200 square feet to over 3,000 square feet, with a lot of optional spaces in that. Every home, we really wanted to pay attention to architectural detail. So each of the 4 floor plans has a unique architectural style: French country, shingle, arts and crafts, as well as farmhouse and traditional, just to name a few. And with that architectural style, we also really looked to the roof lines to differentiate those, as well as decorative garage doors with windows included, decorative front doors. Just to name a few teasers, and we'll get into more information as we walk through the process. Every home is included with a 3-car tandem garage. In that tandem space, you have optional room opportunities in there as well, but as you can see from the front of the home, you only see a 2-car. So what that allows for, kind of the architectural plane, you do not become garage dominant where you have a 3rd kind of add-on bay. And it really keeps the streetscape looking, really sharp. So just a few things there. In addition to the front facades and the elevations, we really looked at the rear elevations and how those look, because as you drive down 126th, there are just a handful of homes that will back up to 126th. And with that, we've really maximized. Again, we want to really kind of showcase that or present those. I have a slide here. Let me grab that. Again, this is just an example, and none of the rooms or spaces that you see on the rear of the homes, thanks, John, are optional. In other words, that is the standard house. So you have outdoor living spaces and differential and kind of setbacks and offsets with the different rooms in the homes. And as John had mentioned, just in conclusion, we are excited to be here in this location. I think that this demographic will really enjoy kind of that short bike ride to the Nickel Plate District and enjoy all of the fruits of the redevelopment of the downtown core and continue to work. We look forward to continuing to work with staff and with the neighbors around this parcel. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions for the petitioner? Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion at first reading.
Thank you, John. And we will move on to item number, we on 13 now?
Yes.
Item 13, 042015C.
All right, the next item before you tonight is the Wasson Nursery rezone. This again is for only first reading tonight. So this would rezone a piece of land for the Wasson Nursery PUD. This would take a piece of ground that's zoned R3 and PUD-R to PUD-C. It is approximately 6 acres in size. It's on the south side of 126th Street between Pennington Road and Oleo Road. The Wasson Nursery proposal would basically be enhancing the existing Wild River Nursery site. So again, it's a developed site today, and the petitioner is Wasson Nursery. Just to see where the project is in terms of the overall city limits, it's in this area over here on the east side of I-69, again, just west of Oleo. In terms of the surrounding uses, to the south and to the west is the Gray Eagle development. This is the Gray Eagle golf course over here. To the north is the Tanglewood development, and there, I believe, are some equestrian acres over here north of 126th Street. If we look at the aerial and the concept plan, you can see that some changes are being proposed from the existing site. There is a small building that's located in this area, right here with the green roof. But as part of the development proposal, there would be a much larger structure in this area. So the majority of the site is zoned R3. As I stated, there's an existing landscape business that's there today. The PUD varies the development standards that are in the C2 district. Now, the total amount of square footage under roof that I had mentioned before is about 21,450 square feet. What's important to remember about this PUD is that it only allows for uses related to the landscape business, and I believe those the specific language is outlined in the report. Also, as part of the project, the petitioner would be placing additional landscaping along the fence, which is along the south side of the property and the east side of the property. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those. The petitioner is here as well. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? The petitioner want to? Hate to not give you your chance at the microphone, Steve. So.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. Good evening. For the record, I'm Steve Harden, a partner with Faegre Baker Daniels. Pleased to be representing Wasson Nursery. From Wasson Nursery is Mr. Bob Wasson and Mr. John Parda over here. If you have any questions for them this evening. Thank you, Adam, for your report. I'll be brief as well, but just to give you a couple of highlights. One of the interesting features of this proposal is much like, if you remember, the Rita's Backyard rezoning in 2014. That was a project that had been granted a variance to allow essentially a nursery and business on that site near a residential area back in the late 90s through the city of Noblesville, when the city of Noblesville had the zoning jurisdiction for the unincorporated areas of Fall Creek Township. Similarly, this site, for anyone who had has been out in this area for a while. You might remember McLean Gardens. In 1995, the city of Noblesville, when it had the jurisdiction for zoning over the unincorporated areas of Fall Creek Township, approved a similar land use variance to authorize a landscape business, nursery, and related uses. And the McLeans then operated that business for quite some time. And now currently it's being operated by Wild River Nursery and Landscaping in that area. So one of the things that is being proposed then here is to not continue to use, like Rita's had an old land use variance granted by another city. Rita's wanted to upgrade and update that zoning ordinance to make sure everything's legal and correct. And as we went through this process for this site, one of the things that we discovered was that there's part of this is zoned R3, part of it's part of the PUD. There's like 6 different parcels that were all kind of piecemealed together over the last couple of decades. So one of the cleanup pieces will be to replat this property into one parcel as we go through the process. And the first step is to go through the zoning aspect of that. The good news in working with the Wasson team is that they are a first-rate landscaping and nursery business. And so when it comes to providing buffer and landscaping, hopefully that is not an issue that you're asking us to do a better job on by the time this gets back to you from the Plan Commission. We will be going to the Plan Commission in May. We anticipate having our neighbors meeting in advance of that. And as we've talked about before, most people view zoning and planning from their front porch and their back porch. And we have mostly, as we showed on this previous exhibit, the neighbors live all back around here. There's an existing fence that is on the property line along this side of the property, and then it weaves in and out on to the nursery property over here. And there are a series of trees that the developer put on the back of the residential lots, but really not a lot of other landscaping has been done in the back of those lots. And so we've come up with the landscaping plan that is in our best idea of what we're anticipating the neighbors would like to see. But if there's anything I've learned over the years of meeting with neighbors is that they'll have their own views of what they like and don't like. And so the Wasson team is prepared to meet with them and just kind of say, here's what we're thinking. We would plan to keep the fence and put additional trees here, but if they might say, gosh, we hate the fence, please take that down, that's something that they're completely open to. Or they may say, please keep the fence at all costs, and maybe you could do this type of landscaping instead of the type you're proposing. So we're prepared to work through that, real excited about it, and appreciate working with the staff through a variety of things, and to try to help make this really upgrade the aesthetic of what it looks like, both from driving down 126th Street and for the neighbors living adjacent to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Any question for the petitioner?
Just for Plan Commission consideration, and the Wasson business is pretty expansive. In addition to on-site work, they do a lot of, this month was Landscape Architecture Month, as we read and started. I know they do a lot of, work in people's homes and businesses and things of that nature. So a number of issues would be, is this facilities building meant to be a garage for land, or will there be on-site storage of heavy moving equipment, earth moving equipment, things like that. So it's just the nature of that sort of the full use, because I think the intent is to use it for more broadly than just straight retail store and buy and take away. If that is the intent, I'm not sure.
Sure.
Just clarity.
Okay, great. I just wanted to state for the record, because I regrettably have a business relationship, I will be abstaining.
But I think the one thing too is, I think when this came up, I think the comment you made or others was well-established family business and, with long track record of success and wherever they've ventured. So it'd be good to have we talked about the entrepreneurial aspects. It's also being a community that attracts, companies like Wasson and others come into the community.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to have first reading.
Thank you, Stuart. Moving on to item 14. 042015D.
Good evening. The next item before you is the Florida Commons rezone. Again, this is just for first reading at this time. This is a rezone for the Florida Commons PUD, and it's from R2 zoning to PUDR. It involves about 63 acres, and it's on the west side of Florida Road between Southeastern Parkway and 113th Street. The petitioner on this case is Silverthorne Homes. As you can see from this broad location map, the project is located off of Florida on the eastern end of Fishers. Again, it is unincorporated at this time. In terms of the zoning, again, it's R2. It is surrounded by R2 zoning. On the next slide, I'll show you a little bit more specifically. To the south is the Indiana Gun Club. This has been here since the early 50s. This area over here is a Duke Energy substation. To the west is a Ryland Homes built-out subdivision called the Woods at Geist Overlook. And then to the north, there's some agricultural fields and some forested areas along Thorpe Creek. On the bottom right, you'll see the concept layout. They would be connecting to an existing stub street in the Woods at Geist Overlook. And then, of course, it would also connect to Florida Road. Just to give you some specifics on the project, it's a 122-lot, single-family residential subdivision, and they are amending the standards of the R5 zoning district. The density is at about 1.9 dwelling units per acre, and that is less than the target of 3.0 that is set out in the R5 zoning district. However, in terms of the minimum lot size and the minimum lot width at 7,500 square feet and 70 feet respectively, those do match the R5 standards. Again, similar to the Beezer Homes project in terms of the architectural features, some items that they've committed to doing involve no vinyl siding. It would be all fiber cement. They do deeper roof overhangs and enhanced garage doors. Also, in terms of the property to the south and how to buffer that, they would either provide an 8-foot tall wooden fence or evergreen trees along the south property line. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Harden can provide some additional information. Thank you.
Previous project, we talked about concerns with the residents on Florida Road. The entrance to this would be right off of Florida Road, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the number of residents again?
There are 122 lots. We have been working closely with the engineering department because at this point in time we do want to ensure that to the maximum extent possible a deceleration lane is provided along Florida. There's no, it would be outside of the boundaries of this project, but we are taking a look at that issue and we'll continue to evaluate
I didn't understand. The outside of the boundaries of what?
Of this project.
Okay.
So again, we'll be taking a look at that carefully. Additionally, to answer your question on greater Florida Road issues as part of that Welchel Springs development, we have had a meeting with the engineering department to make sure that we flag Florida Road as a thoroughfare that needs to be upgraded at some point. And so those discussions will continue.
Yeah, I just think we need to be mindful of those residents, not only that previous Welchel Springs project, but also this, if we consider it, because that road has some issues. So we need to really be mindful of that.
You mentioned the neighborhood to the west, Geist Woods Overlook. or the Woods at Guy, I can't remember the name of it right now. The Woods, I think it's called. Where you see the west borderline of this subject parcel, there's a large berm there and a fence on top too, I think, in that area. Or maybe it's further north. So you're showing an implied residential connection there, right? So this neighborhood would be proposed to have the road connect into Geist Overlook, the Woods, correct?
Correct.
Again, for the record, my name is Rick Brandow, Assistant Director of Community Development. We've had a number of conversations with the proposed developer about the frontage limitations onto Florida Road. We have, during our pre-TAC meeting, as Adam indicated, we shared our concerns with our engineering department, recognizing that Florida Road is not annexed and not part of the city yet. So the county highway would have to be involved with any right-of-way acquisitions or anything like that. We did not want to basically shut down the developer right off the bat. We did express concerns, but we are very concerned about the XL, decel, and passing blister requirements for a 122-lot subdivision that also stubs to the west to a substantial neighborhood to the, and also recognizing that there's a junior high east of this location. We would think that there would be a lot of traffic going through the cutting through this neighborhood. One other item that I'd like to point out that I did not see in Adam's presentation was there is a request, if it's still there, of increasing the garage dominancy of the product they're proposing. They're proposing to increase the percent allowed for a garage up to 66%, I believe it is, from the allowable, I think it's 50%. That was not noted, and I wanted to make sure that the council was aware of that. We have expressed some concern about that too.
What is the zoning of the Woods at Geist Overlook? Is it R2, R3?
If you will, I'll look at the map.
It's R2.
So I think for Plan Commission, it'd be good to have a comparison to the underlying zoning that it exists today, and then compare it to the Woods at Geist Overlook as built.
Any other questions for staff? No, I'll go ahead and call the petitioner.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, I'm Steve Harden, the partner at Faegre Baker Daniels. I'm pleased to be representing Silverthorne before you this evening. From Silverthorne is Mr. Paul Clare. If you have any questions for him. Thank you, Adam, for your report and update. And much like Welchel Springs, this project will be contributing road impact fees to help pay for the improvements along Florida Road. It'll be about, we're still working on the final estimate, probably somewhere around $250,000 of road impact fees for this project. The development team is well aware of the need to provide adequate, access and ACL, decel lanes, just like on every project. And so that's something that would be being worked through as we get to the technical detail stage of the project. A couple of things I just wanted to point out to you. The site presents both some challenges, but also some real opportunities for the city. So what you can see here, this is 113th Street, Florida Road. This is the Indiana Gun Club. Over here is the Woods at Geist Overlook. And then in addition to the substation, the gun club, there are 3 power lines. We've had lots of projects over the years where there is 1 power line running through a site, and you have some challenges with dealing with the easements, dealing with the aesthetics. This particular piece of property has, and this is, you'll see on the screen, this is showing, we've dropped in the graphic to show the exact location of those poles and the different lines. Most of those poles have about 3 different lines on each of the poles. So you've got anywhere from probably 8 to 9 different lines running through that. But there are 3 different power lines. One runs this way on an east-west angle and then connects to the substation. The other 2 then run up along here. And that's not to denigrate the site. It's just to simply talk about the realities of a gun club to the south that's been there for a long time, and then the power lines that are there in the substation, and then to design a project that will be able to fit within those constraints. The density of the project is about 1.9 units per acre, which is about the same density as Welchel Springs that just came through. Back in 2008, when I think the current comprehensive plan was done, I believe when you look at this whole area out here, it was contemplated that it would be up to 2 units per acre. I know that there's a lot of talk about we need to update our comprehensive plan, which is completely understandable, but historically, wanted to just share that with you. What's interesting also, and we had some conversations with the staff about this, and I think it was particularly Adam that brought it up, and we appreciate that. He pointed us to the fact that there might be some opportunities here from the city's perspective to help enhance the trail corridor and the greenways plan. Much like roads get improved, not all at once, but as each project comes in, that part of that road gets fixed. And when a project comes in along a greenway, if the city's able to acquire some real estate, possibly some easements for trail connections, then over a long period of time, we then look back and our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids can have a trail corridor and pedestrian network that's really awesome and something to be really proud of. And so in this area, the Thorpe Creek Greenway, this is a picture from the current master plan for the alternate transportation plan, and it contemplates a greenway that runs all up and down this corridor. So Adam brought that to our attention, and then we started thinking about what does that really mean here, and then one of the, and let me back this up. And if you also notice, one of the challenges we talked about were the 2 power lines in the easement that runs in this kind of southeasterly direction, northwesterly direction. As you can see through there when you look at the aerial, that's why there's an opening through that area of that aerial. Those are the power lines that are running through there, and the staff asked us, if the city decides that it would like to have a trail within that power line easement to provide connectivity, is that something that you'd be willing to do? And the idea would be that that might get then included into the new alternate transportation plan. We started looking at that closer, and it looks like it actually, for this particular area, it really fits. It makes a lot of sense. Here's the Thorpe Creek potential corridor. The city already owns, let me zoom in on this. Some of you may not know this yet, but the city already owns, and that's not coming up very well, I'm sorry. The city owns this acreage all through here from the past town council, acquired that land that is called the Thorpe Creek Natural Area. And this has an opportunity as the land adjacent to the Thorpe Creek gets developed to be able to have different pieces of that corridor come into the city from an overall greenway parks plan. So why am I spending this time to talk about that? Because what the staff encouraged the development team to do is to consider that and to see if they might be willing to help make that happen. So what we're showing on the plan here, we've got one that's a little bit more blown up. This one is that we're showing a potential trail that would run along here. That trail would go within that power line easement, and that would be something that would be park impact fee creditable. This area down here, which is where I'm really sorry you're not able to see this. We'll have this better for the Plan Commission and we'll come back to you again. But the creek runs along this area here. The city's land essentially runs to the north of where the creek runs, and then the creek comes onto this property just a little bit here. But what the developer would do is to grant that land to the city at no cost without any park impact fee credits. And we will work in more detail with the city to see just what does the city really want to do, how much do they want, is this really part of the plan. But the good news is when you're doing projects out here in the area that is in a growing area, it affords the opportunity to do some long-range planning, particularly when the staff or the city mentions an idea that this is something that could be done. And so we were more than happy to be able to work through that. We also were asked by some folks about, well, what's the kind of comparable price point in the Ryland neighborhood here at the Woods at Geist Overlook. Those home price, the assessed values range from $245,000 to over $350,000. The 8 homes, can't see it really well right, oh maybe you can. The 8 homes that are right in this area back and right up to the power line easement that also runs through that development, those 8 homes have an average of about $279,000. And the homes in this development are expected to average about $300,000. And we've got the variety of different things, as I think Adam mentioned in there, about the enhanced garage doors, no vinyl siding, things like that that would be expected here in the city. So we're working through that. The development team paid particular attention to the Welchel Springs project that came through. We understand the big issues, hot button issues, to talk to the neighbors about the road improvements, the buffering, landscaping, and all of those items, and those are all planned to be done as well in a very orderly, professional way. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, we'll see you then.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Real quick, Pete. The only comment I'll make, and I was going to make it, or I started to think about it too, for the other one that we had 2 cases ago, 126 on Lantern. And I'm just stating this because there's some risk and reward anytime you look through projects. In this case, they've got a lot of area that you can't build on because you've got power lines and things like that. The other one, it drops off in the back, so you've got a certain amount. But the only thing I'll point out is that it is now R2, and their density is going to be an R2, but they are able to achieve that because there's a big difference between the lot areas. So you've got width and you've got area, so there's a way to achieve that. So really the risk and reward is you allow a smaller lot in order to get the density that is an R2, but at the same time, in order to do that, you get more park ground, you get something else. Because sometimes if you clump it in one area, that's a benefit. I'm just stating things to kind of think through when it comes back. So that one I thought of too, which I'll mention when it comes back, and then this one as well.
Any other comments?
I have a comment. I guess being new to the city council, I want to be able to make good decisions, but I don't get a good sense of the overall plan for the east side of Fishers, that whole area. So I don't know if there's clarification that we could get in terms of what the vision of the city is, what kind of homes, what kind of businesses, what is the plan there on the east side. And so we have all of these residential developments wanting to come up, and I'm not clear as to, is it in tune with the plan that we have?
Cecilia, just in fairness to Steve, because Steve's just representing one petitioner on
No,
one
I
piece of land, I
understand.
think that's probably more to staff.
No, I know. I guess
Okay,
as we're talking about it,
again, I think
it's
it's
the
an
staff.
unfair question for the petitioner, but I think Zach, and I think we kind of addressed that up there as we're taking a look at that from a master planning perspective, as we talked about that upstairs, as to really what the desire is for that area which is going to be built out that way. And what I remember hearing being discussed, we will probably see that next month. Is that what I remember hearing that? So within a month, I think the mayor and his group is going to come back with what that vision, at least from their planning perspective, is going to look like. So,
If you
again,
I'm sorry that it's out there in the record that, I'd like to see a plan in place.
The current documentation that the city has is there's a future land use map that was adopted in 2008. And if you see that map, it's very easy to read, and it goes through and has a few commercial retail nodes. So like when we had the Welchel Springs to the north of that at Cynthia Ann Road in Southeastern Parkway is a retail node there. Most everything from the 136th Street south, almost all of that was planned, is planned on the current plan for residential development. And most of it, when you look at that plan from 2008, encouraged density of under 2.0 units per acre. And then the city currently has in the UDO, it has the architectural standards that would be required to be met if you just move forward and plat your property today, which would allow vinyl siding and certain types of other things that when we do a new project, what we're doing is we're proposing upgrades from the current standards as well as some other things to be able to provide some additional flexibility. So what you have is the UDO that has architectural standards today, and most of the PUD ordinances that you see that we submit will default to those standards or propose some alternative standards. So you can zoom in on what are the what are the differences on a given project. But most of the projects that you're going to see that are being proposed are all fitting, for the most part, the density that was suggested in the 2008 plan.
And I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out in terms of, too, also planning like roads, trails, connectivity, things of that nature to kind of have an overview of the whole area. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question for the petitioner?
Just a comment, I guess, as I understand it, really, Pete, you kind of alluded to it, but, in the overall city revisiting land use planning, but also strategic planning, land use planning would be part of the master planning revisit that'll happen over the summer, where the mayor has talked about at not only the state of the city, but also then the city council, plan commission, and the community at large. Well, there'll be a public process for that, so there'll be a lot of opportunity for dialogue. I think it's going to get kicked off next month, but really it'll be an effort that'll happen throughout the entire summer, going into the fall. I think the other thing for plan commission would be this. You were keen to highlight some of the land issues, the power lines and otherwise, but the issue would be if it were to be for plan commission and be brought back at the council, if it were to be developed, as you noted, which developer has the inherent property right to develop it under certain conditions today, what would that, but you have express limitations on this property, so what's the lot number of units that this property could develop as is, with the physical limitations. I think that's always something to be, we talk about sometimes what's out there, what can be developed, but there is limitations to this parcel, and David kind of even highlighted the last parcel had some topographical issues. This has some power line issues and the like. Thank you. First reading.
I'm going to go ahead and, okay. Who said that, David? Stuart? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, moving on to item number 15, request to approve Salt Barn exemption. And I'm absolutely sure this can be very quick. And I'm not really sure how much controversy we have in a Salt Barn exemption.
Well, actually, I don't have any slides at all. As you have in your packets there, you have the Salt Barn exemption memo as well as the exemption ordinance, which allows the city of Fishers to exempt itself from the Unified Development Ordinance standards if needed. In order to do that, staff must first present which items of the Unified Development Ordinance we cannot comply with. And in this case, again with the Salt Barn, the Unified Development Ordinance restricts the overall height of an accessory structure to 18 feet as it's measured from the lot ground level to the midpoint of the roof. The proposed Salt Barn will have an overall height of 21 feet. So that is the Public Works official request tonight, is that they be exempt from the accessory structure overall height standards in order to move forward with the construction of the Salt Barn.
I'll make a motion unless somebody has a...
Go for it.
That's great. I love the motion from David. Do I have a second? Second from John. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Do you have a second? I didn't get to any other unfinished or new business. Okay, seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor, please say aye. We're adjourned.